Of February 11th to order. It's now 6 p.m. And we will start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we're going to run through just a couple things before the school committee calls their meeting to order. Roll call vote. Eric here.
Tyler here. Don here.
Missy here.
Is Kim on?
No, Kim's not on yet.
Okay.
She should be joining us.
Right. Okay, so we have a few announcements. This meeting is recorded by the local scene. Anyone intending to make an audio or video recording of this meeting should notify the chair at this time. Seeing nobody. Financial assistance applications are available on the town's website or by calling the Selectmen's office. For anyone interested in volunteering, there are several vacancies on various committees and boards. To see a complete list of the openings, please visit our website at kingstonma.gov. Also, please check our website for any additional events or notices. Again, it's www.kingstonma.gov. A couple upcoming important meetings. On April 26th, we have our town meeting, and on May 17th, we have our town election. At this point, we're going to have open forum, so if anybody would like to... Oh, Kim, okay, Kim Menberg did join us online. If anybody would like to speak at open forum, just raise your hand, and I'll ask you to go up to the podium. Yep, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Stacia Levitt. I am the president of the Kingston Teachers Association, and with me tonight is my co-president, Kristen Pishkin. As a teacher of 32 years at the Kingston Public Schools and someone who grew up in Kingston, I have encountered these budget shortfalls in the past. We have always found a path forward as a community to overcome these shortfalls.
As a teacher of 18 years, 16 in Kingston and 2 in Natick, I know firsthand what it feels like to lose a position in Natick through budget cuts. Thankfully, I've never had to worry again about this, as Kingston has always been a town able to find resources to keep as many positions as possible.
We stand here tonight once again to raise the concern about the fiscal crisis in which we find ourselves. Our core programming and current staffing levels are under a threat as we face budget cuts. Less than a year ago, we were in the very similar position. As a result, our growing student population has not been served by the number of educators recommended to help support their learning needs.
We are imploring this joint body to take the critical first steps in voting in favor of a budget tonight that adequately funds our schools and meets all students' needs. The Kingston School Committee heard us as a community just over a week ago and voted to support a budget our students need to thrive. In the absence of your support and favorable votes tonight, what we face as a school district is nothing short of catastrophic to our students' education and future. Increased class sizes, potential increase to special education caseloads, reduced support staff, among other devastating cuts. This is not even including cuts that the middle and high school are facing that will also impact Kingston students.
We cannot allow this to happen to our community of learners for the future of our students and of our town. We were in this position last year, and we're in this position again this year. We don't want to be in this position again next year. We need to find some long-term solutions to help our school not only recover from previous cuts, but prevent additional cuts in the future. We implore you to not only bring this to the community of Kingston for a vote, but also to look hard to find other funding solutions that should be available to us. Funding that is available for state budget reserves, unallocated fair share amendment revenues. MTA and other agencies have already proposed bills that, if passed, will increase Chapter 70, increase circuit breaker, increase transportation funding, and increase charter school reimbursement, among other proposals. I have some details of that information with me tonight, and I will leave with you. On behalf of the Kingston Teachers Association, please know that we understand the stress of this potential budget, and we want to work with the community to come up with a long-term solution that is best for our students, our school, our community, our staff, and our town. As Kristen mentioned, Kingston always tries to find a way to preserve as many positions as possible. However, we are still recovering from past budget cuts where programs and positions were removed and have never returned. People choose to move here for our close-knit community and our excellent school systems. Please vote to let the people of Kingston decide what our school budget will look like. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Anybody else here in the room? Carl? And I'll get you next. Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Carl Pike, Shore Drive, Chairman of the Finance Committee. Good evening, board members. I promise to keep this short tonight. I just want to respond to a couple of comments concerning cuts recently. If I go back to FY23, 4 years ago, counting FY26, we have increased the education budget here in Kingston by $7.3 million. It's gone from $25.8 million to $33.1 million. That's an increase of 28% over 4 years, an average of 7% per year. Sometimes you have to take a hard look at where you're throwing your money. And it may be a situation we're getting into where just throwing money after the problems aren't resolving the problems. I also want to look at how we've been funding police and fire. Police in the last 2 years, including what we have in the budget for FY26 that you approved 2 weeks ago, has been an increase of $1.1 million. We've gone from $4.3 million for the police to $5.4 million in the proposed budget for this next coming year. That's an increase of $1.1 million for over the 2-year period, a total funding increase of 25%. Fire. 2 years ago, we had a budget of $3.7 million. The budget that we're proposing for this year is $4.3 million, an increase of almost $600,000. Prior to that, we had approved the hiring of 4 new firefighters. So that goes into the budget from 3 years ago or so. So in summary, I just want to report back that I believe that Kingston continues to fund education above and beyond what is sustainable. We all know that there's such a thing as Proposition 2.5. We strive to have new growth in town that will allow 4% or so budget increases annually. 7%, 8% annually is not sustainable. I encourage you to say no to any override for this year. Problems are not always solved by merely throwing money at them. A lot of times what you do is you kick the can down the road and you'll have a bigger problem the next year. I have full confidence that our leaders in education, that our teachers in education will find ways to continue the excellence in our schools that we all desire and that we've become accustomed to. I believe that we have a police department and a fire department that serve this town very well, and that they will find ways, if they don't get everything that they would like to have this year, they will find ways to get along without it and to look to get that over future years. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Pike. And just introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jackie Giovanangelo of Franz Lane. I'm a mom of an incoming kindergartner for the upcoming school year, and I'm very concerned with the proposed budgets. These cuts, as written, would have a lifelong effect on our youngest of learners. The potential increase of class sizes to the mid-20s due to this is entirely unmanageable and unacceptable. These children are only 5 and 6 years old. How can that many students be managed at once to ensure all are able to learn to the best of their abilities? With that many children in one class, especially without adequate supplemental support, it seems like an impossible feat. The formative years are when our children learn lifelong skills, and it is vital the utmost concern is given to this matter. We will be doing a disservice to our children if these cuts proceed. Please remember that their future is at stake, and it's not just about the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room like to speak?
Hi, I'm Cassie Lemke. I am on Crescent Street. I have a son who is in Kingston Elementary, currently receiving services through the school, and I think what we also have to consider is the benefits of him getting these services in school is that he's not getting lost in the crowd. With higher class sizes, kids who need this extra help and don't have the support of the paras or the teachers are overwhelmed, they're just going to get lost. And we're basically just, dropping kids because we can't have the adequate staffing. And I'm not well written like Jackie. But I just think it's unfair to children to just kind of sink or swim at some point. If we're cutting staff, we're cutting paras. I mean, there are paras who are kind of helping with multiple children, and I know that at a time when my son was moving from pre-K to kindergarten, I was terrified that he wasn't going to survive kindergarten because of his abilities, new environments, but with the help of paras and teachers and all the adequate staffing that is there, he's thriving. And when you take that away, I'm afraid for him, and I'm afraid for other kids coming into the school, what they would have to endure. And I also think that with Kingston, and I know myself, I've been here my whole life, in Kingston, a lot of people are moving here because of the school system. They're moving here because the school is so well known for the programs and their support, and when you take that away, I think you're doing a disservice to the town, you're doing a disservice to the kids. So that's all.
All right, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Yeah, go ahead.
Cheryl Bond, 7 Frank Street, Kingston, Mass. Although I know I am on the Kingston Elementary School Committee, I'm just speaking as a parent today. I think that I know that many people have heard I'm on the school committee. I have been on the school committee on and off for 10 years, and I was also selectman last year for 4 years. So I know where everybody sits on both sides of the house here. And I'm also a parent to 3 children in the school system. So I have a 7-year-old in first grade, and I have 2 students at the high school, a 7th grader and a senior who just got into a bunch of colleges, so thank you. But I do want to just say that I think it's really important that, we are all trying to work together and trying to find a way to make this work. But we, as a town and as a committee, have to have free and appropriate education for every student in this town. So every student has to have it, whether you are part of your regular day classroom or having a student with disabilities or any type of issue that you do have. And especially, everybody wants to pretend that COVID doesn't exist anymore, but students still have a lot of issues coming out of that. And I think that stating that we are, just shoving money just to keep things going is not true and appropriate. I think we try very hard to find money where we can. I know that we received some money from the state, and we want to do that. But we have to have free and appropriate education for all students. And as a parent, I'm not going to let my students or my kids fall through the cracks. My kids have needed the reading specialist. My kids are IEPs. And so I understand that we have to have special education in our town, and it is mandatory. It's not something we can not have and appropriated. Yes, should we get our share of the free share of the millionaire's tax? Yes. Am I lucky I work for 4 Cs and you get free community college? That's great. But our kids also should get some of that money too. And we need to talk to our legislators about giving us more money. And don't forget that last year, the preschool also moved over to Silver Lake. And that's one of the main reasons for the issues that we have had as well regarding the budget. So it's always ebbing and flowing. But I was on this committee for many years when it was part-time kindergarten and it was no vice principals. And we can't live like that anymore. And I'm so tired of hearing people saying, well, we've done it before. Well, I get that. We are in very tough fiscal times. But more than ever, a lot of people in this town have children in the school system. And I'm not saying that the police and fire don't deserve as much as they do. I've heard it many times over, and I think they deserve what we can give them as well. And I think we do have to look in budgets and cut where we can. But to cut from the kids and cut from the teachers, I think if you listen to what we've said, and I think the other night, I did say yes to the budget because I want to have a strong conversation and I don't want to leave you with no budget. And I don't want to leave you without numbers. So I think having a strong conversation tonight is very important. Thanks.
Thank you, Sheila. Anybody else? Is there anybody online with their hand raised? Is that
Hi.
Lauren?
Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
Lauren, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Hi. My name's Lauren Alteris, 3 off 2nd Brook Street. I'm a special education teacher in a neighboring town of 12 years, so I feel that's where I can speak on, not too much on any other parts of the budget, but I just wanted to share. I ask that we don't think about these children as numbers. There's so much more than numbers. I understand it costs a lot to educate children, but they really deserve the education they're currently getting. In regards to the teachers, quote unquote, making it work, I would implore the members of Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, School Committee, to visit an elementary school and see how difficult it currently is to make it work with the staffing that we already have. Children are not the same as they were years ago. Education's not the same as it was years ago. And like, I'm sorry, I think Sheila, as her name just said, COVID effects are still happening. School is not what it was years ago. Just because it worked with that amount of staffing prior doesn't mean it works anymore. Children require an immense amount of support in school, and the school provides so much more than just academics. There's social help, there's, sorry, I can't think right now. But I just ask that you please allow the people of the community to choose if they would like to continue to fund the schools to the best of their ability. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Anybody else online? You can't really see. No? Okay. And again, last chance, anybody here in the room that wanted to speak? Don't be shy if you want to. Don't be worried. All right. Seeing nobody, we're going to move on to our appointments. First, we're going to do an appointment of a Director of Elder Affairs. Then we're going to jump into the joint meeting with the school committee. And this should be pretty quick. Due to a resignation, the Director of Elder Affairs position has been vacant. The Assistant Director, Holly Nagelli, has been serving as the interim. And after the recruitment process that was completed by a working group, the town administrator is recommending the hiring of Holly Nagelli to the position of Director of Elder Affairs. Keith, was there anything else you wanted to say? Or?
No, I don't. I mean, we went through a hiring process. Holly's been acting as the interim now for the past few months. I think has done a tremendous job at revitalizing the COA. I was excited to have her be interested in applying, and I'm thrilled to bring her name forward for the board's consideration.
Great. Any questions, comments, motion?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
Did Wage and Personnel review this, and if so, what was their vote?
Wage and Personnel did review this, and they did approve it. Yep.
Thanks, Kim.
I move to appoint Holly Nagelli to the position of Director of Elder Affairs, full-time wage and personnel, Schedule D12, Step 2, exempt position with the Council on Aging with the anticipated start date of February 13th, 2025, contingent with the terms in the offer letter.
Second.
All right, it needs to be roll call. So all those in favor, Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye.
Don, aye.
Missy, I.
Tim, I.
All right, it's unanimous.
I think Holly wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello. I just wanted to take this opportunity to say a few thank yous. First, I want to thank Keith for the opportunity and for having the confidence in me, excuse me, to fill this important position. I appreciate the support that you've given me over the last few months, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. To the members of the interview committee for taking time out of their schedules to meet with the candidates and provide their feedback. To the Board of Selectmen for your commitment to ensuring that the seniors in Kingston have access to vital services and support to meet their unique needs. To the Council on Aging staff for their hard work and dedication to serving our seniors and for their patience with me while I served as interim director. And to all of those who supported me with well wishes, prayers, good vibes, and go-get-ems, the outpouring of encouragement has truly been humbling. Since starting at the Senior Center in 2019, I have developed friendships with so many wonderful people, some that are here tonight, both inside the center and within this building. And as I look to the future, I am excited to grow those relationships as well as establish new ones. Working alongside the Council on Aging staff, the Council on Aging Advisory Board, and the Friends of the Kingston Council on Aging, I am committed to making the Senior Center a warm and welcoming place where seniors feel supported as they age. I invite you all to come visit us anytime. I would love to show you around the wonderful facility that is the Kingston Senior Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly, for being willing to, for applying for the position. I'm sure you're going to do great.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats, thank you. All right, now we're going to move on to our meeting with the representatives from the Kingston School Committee. Do you want to call your meeting to order?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to call the Kingston School Committee to order with a roll call vote. Sheila Vaughn.
Here.
Trisha Arietta.
Here.
Michael Chicane.
Here.
And Megan Cannon, I'm here.
Thank you. All right, perfect. So I'll just give them a minute to.
It's so fun, come stay.
All right. So we're meeting tonight to discuss the budget because we had voted a budget a couple of weeks ago prior to your voting a budget that fell within our tax levy. So we had most of the department budgets, but we obviously didn't have the school budgets, either the regional or the local. So you guys, at your last meeting, voted a budget that included an amount over what we had allocated originally when we voted, which obviously then requires an override. So that's what we're here tonight to kind of discuss, maybe have some conversation back and forth. And figure out what we're going to do, because it's up to the Board of Selectmen to put on the town meeting warrant if there is going to be an override. And I attended your meeting and I asked you guys to come up with a number as soon as you can, because if there is going to be an override, we need to do it sooner rather than later. People really need to know what's going on. Same thing's going on in Halifax and Duxbury and other towns, and there seems to be a lot more conversations about it. Here in Kingston, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of public discussions or things kind of going on about it. It almost seems like people don't know about it. So it's super important that if we are putting an override on the town meeting warrant, it needs to get out there ASAP. If Keith gave me the numbers because I couldn't remember exactly, but it looks like what you're looking for is $986,782 that would be on an override. That's above and beyond the budget numbers that we had originally voted. So, and I'm not sure that we're going to take a vote tonight, but we want to have a discussion, because again, we don't have the Silver Lake numbers yet. They're meeting on Thursday, and time will tell what will happen there. I believe their budget deficit is even greater, though there's more pressure from Halifax and Plimpton to not have an override, even for their elementary levels. So there's a lot of pressure. There's also a lot of pressure here in Kingston. I mean, I was on school committee during the last two overrides, one in 2008 and then 2013, and there was just wall-to-wall people in the meetings when we discussed those budget cuts, and people were there, but they weren't so much systemic issues, but really just kind of one-time, one-offs. I mean, obviously, the 2008 it was the financial crisis. So that was short-term. The 2013, I don't even remember what the reason was, but it was just a one-year thing. We didn't need an override again after that. So this, there was a big increase last year, and we spent a lot of our remaining tax levy, which you've heard Carl talk about. We had at one point, what was the high, 2 million, 3 million under?
Close to 3.
Close to $3 million in available tax levy. And what that means is the amount of money that we can tax up to without having an override. So with a $3 million override, a $3 million available tax levy, we could have raised everybody's taxes considerably without going to an override vote for people to see that. So it's good financial duties to have not tax completely to your levy. So last year, I think we had 800,000 available in our tax levy for this coming year. Is that right? So we ate up a lot of it last year with increases. So now we're going to be eating that up completely this year. So one of the other problems we have is sustainability. So we have a water moratorium. There's not a lot of building. People can build if they can dig a well, so if they have their own well. But if they're going to tap into water, they can't because of the moratorium. So there could be business development over at the mall, though that looks like it's probably 3 to maybe 4 years off in the future. So our anticipated growth for next year is not very high. I think it's just $300,000 or $400,000 for next year. Yeah, and then the 2.5% increase that we would have, was that like 1.1 or 1.2 million? Yeah, so 1.105 plus another 300,000 in growth, so it's not a lot. So we had that this year plus the 800,000. Next year we're not. So if we're looking at an override this year, well, let's just take, for example, if we did $1 million override. If we did $1 million override, we need to actually ask for more than that, because otherwise next year we're dead in the water and you have to make cuts again. So we would have to actually ask for, I'm just making this up, like say $1.6 million instead of $1 million. But we would only tax the $1 million, and the remaining 600,000 that would pass at town meeting and election would then remain in our tax available levy that would be available next year, in addition to the growth and what's under the 2.5%. So without that, we're dead in the water because we have this revenue problem in the town, not just from the state in terms of state aid and whatnot, but just our own growth here in town. Unless we can convince everybody to buy a new car, then that's excise taxes go up, but I don't see that happening either. So these are the concerns and the issues that we have. So an override isn't going to be a permanent fix. It's just to it's a Band-Aid. And then the next year we get the same problem again. So we're getting a lot of pressure, and so are a lot of local towns to not do overrides. Other towns don't have the same problem that we do in terms of growth. Well, Halifax does. Halifax does not have much growth at all. They're very anti-growth, plus they just don't have much business. Plimpton has Cisco, so that helps them out quite a bit. Plymouth has a lot of commercial business, so they don't have as much of an issue as we do. So as you can see, we have a lot of things that are pushing on us. It's not like a regular year where an override is a no-brainer, where it's something simple. But like your increases, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like your increases for next year, it was roughly $1 million for special ed and then $1 million in salaries. So the problem is we don't know if next year's special ed isn't going to go up the same amount, but we also don't know. You guys probably know. You may not have it with you, but Sarah would probably know based on your newer contract, how much your salaries are gonna go up next year. So I don't know what those numbers are, but if we had, as we move through the process, and Megan had suggested putting a working group together to talk about next year's budget and planning, that's one of the things we're gonna have to look at. I know I'm saying a lot, and I don't mean to monopolize this, but in a few minutes, I'll let my board comment as well. But Megan, do you want to start off and say, you have anything that you want to say?
Thank you for inviting us to come tonight and have this
Sure.
conversation. I think this is one of the most important things, is for us to talk about this and collaborate to try to come to a number that everybody can live with. Unfortunately, the reality is, no matter how you slice it, there is a population of the town that is going to be upset, and quite a bit upset, whether it's parents regarding the children in the schooling, or, you know, we have people on a fixed income, and we understand that. And I'd just like to say, there's been a lot of comments going around in the last week or so implying that we have not thought of certain populations in the town, that we have disregarded them, we have no obligation to them. I'd just like to state for the record, that is not true. We absolutely have thought about all the populations, and the problem is, everybody's not going to come to the same agreement, and at the end of the day, yes, when you support one, you may not be supporting the other, but it doesn't mean that they weren't thought about. They have been considered. It's just a really tough situation. I mean, I have senior parents that live in this town on a fixed income, so this is personal to me, and I think I speak for everybody when I say nobody here has just callously gone into this thinking, oh, well, we'll just ask for an override. I think everybody has spent hours and hours pouring through numbers and papers and emails trying to come up with a solution, to solve some of this. And then the other thing I'd like to comment on is that there's also been a lot of comments about us not thinking about the future and planning ahead. And there are different ways that you could look at that. One way is to have money to plan ahead, which is obviously not an option for us right now. So the second is to make decisions that really are planning ahead. And one of the things that we've considered is every cut that we make puts us a little closer to higher special education costs. And when we look at things like larger class sizes, cutting reading specialists, in a few more years, whatever money we might have saved on those salaries, we might double or triple in special education costs. And once we cross that line, there's no negotiating how much money is spent, because once a student is eligible for those services, that's it. They are eligible, and we are obligated to provide them whatever that dollar cost is. So we have not been thoughtless about this at all. These are some of the thoughts that we've had, and I'd like to give my committee a chance just to comment on those thoughts, if that's all right with you.
Well, I'm just happy to, Eric, knowing that you've come to these meetings, and I just, because I don't want to talk too long, because I've already talked, but just that you've been, going to those meetings, and I know I saw Dawn, and you guys are watching and you're listening, and I know that you listened to that very long meeting. And I know that you all understand what's going on. And, it is a lot of salaries, and it's special education, which is mandated, right? But it's also the fact is that there are other things that we don't think about, as like OTs and PTs. They decided to up our contract by like $8 an hour. Okay, well, that affects the bottom line as well. So there are contracts that, like you said, working groups of things that we can look at that why aren't we going out to bid for like other things like that? Or what, like that came up too late, but in the year, like those types of things. But, I think you're right. I think there are certain things that we have to have, and there's no way around it. But it's also, it's a give and take for everybody in the town, and we're all hurting. So, but I appreciate you coming, and I appreciate you listening and having us here tonight, so feel free.
Whether you want to speak.
Yeah, I think, last year we did some cuts. If we're asked to do more cuts, I don't know what the school's going to be able to handle. We're going to see larger class sizes. We've heard from the public today. We've heard it from the school committee. the attendees at the school committee meetings that it's not something that they want. Obviously, these are the people that are voicing their opinion, and we're trying to take that into consideration. We need to know what can our school sustain. I have a child in KIS going to the middle school next year, so I'm very interested in making sure that there's sustainable class sizes there. Just even getting rid of one teacher, now we got to worry about that in the years to come, like Megan said. Then we're going to have to pay for it in the future. So we're considering not only our own children, town's children, but also the taxpayers. We want to make sure that it's being spent wisely. Obviously, there were some recommendations that were provided, for busing, charging for certain things. Obviously, it's not everything is going to stick, but we are trying, or the committee's trying to find other ways to increase revenue. So we're not going to this with just our blinders on and just looking where can we spend money. So I think we're trying to do our part here and work together.
I'll just say that I've heard from residents this week on the other side of the coin, seniors asking not to have their taxes raised and very concerned about that. And my answer to them really was that there's no growth in Kingston right this moment. So we're kind of at a different situation where educational costs are increasing, but we're very accustomed to having new growth and being able to pay for adding services. So there's, very likely during going down the road, we have to rethink how we're approaching budget in the school system and in adding services. It can't just be where we need these more, whatever it is that we need. We have to kind of rethink, this is the pot that we have to deal with, and be really mindful about how we're adding it. But I speak for myself, but I know we have looked at every single, this budget line by line by line, and some of the costs we don't know yet because there's deadlines that are that's outside of our timeline. But our request in having the override was really to have the ability and the flexibility to ask for that money at the town meeting, because we like that flexibility. In the meantime, as some of the other unknowns come in, we would love to decrease the number that we're asking and only ask the town for the bare minimum, and then going forward to look at different ways that we can approach it. I know Megan's talked about working meeting and different things like that. So I just think we're exhausting as a school committee. We're looking at every angle, and I know some people in the teacher side of things are looking at legislation and talking to legislators and trying to increase revenue for our school. So I just think this is kind of an all hands on deck. I don't think anybody's trying to take more than their department needs, but at the end of the day, we have our kids that we have to educate, and how we do that this year versus next year and the years coming, we may have to look at it different.
I was just passing out the legislation, the thing that she handed me to help fund the schools. Oh, do they need it as well? Probably.
Was that for? That's right. Okay.
Yeah, that's the highlights that really affect us. There's more. Erica gave you the 12.
Yeah.
There's 32 different ones, but those are the highlights there.
And also, Eric, if you're asking, I am in favor of a school resource officer, so there you go.
You're in favor of what?
Our school resource officer,
Yeah.
so.
So I think, and we've talked about this in meetings before. I've talked about it quite a bit. The funding formula for special ed is not right. I mean, and I know it being on the school committee for a long time. The spending on regular day has quite often gone down, but now we're at pretty near the top of the state in spending on special ed. So it's gone the other way, and that isn't sustainable, but then we're told there's nothing you can do about it. So this isn't going to solve our short-term problem. So we need to solve the short-term problem, but the longer term is we need the state to help pay. And one of the things is to have funding follow a student. So if a kid moves from Bellingham to here, then, we're paying for them if they come in a certain time, I guess. It's just not fair, because if we have good programs, if we're doing a good job, then we're going to be making cuts, because we're going to have to pay, because people are moving here for the special ed, and so we have to make cuts to education. So I get it. So the problem is we have a short-term problem. I look at it as a short-term problem, probably 3 years. I'm being optimistic, Mr. Pike. But I'm really hoping that the mall development gets going. I mean, we really are, we see some positive things moving over there. The water department, we're hoping to see some things move there. But again, these are things that are, 3 or 4 years out. So longer term, I think we'll be in a much better position. And Kingston has always supported schools. I think, in our regional district, it's usually been Plimpton and Kingston that has supported most budgets, and then Halifax, if they didn't support it, they would get pulled along because of the regional agreement. They had to fund it. But it's just the short term and the unknown of what's going to happen next year, because we don't know what's going to happen, if it's going to be another $2 million increase, and that would eat up every cent that's available without an override. And even if we did an override, like I said, we'd have to ask for much more that we could then tax even more next year. So, does anybody here on the board have a question? I'll start with Tyler.
I always have something to say. So, I want to echo some of what the school committee said. There's been a lot of back and forth. There's been some mudslinging. There's been some stuff, right? I'll be the first to admit I've slung some mud myself, right? And I don't know anybody at this table. I don't know everybody in this room, but everybody I do know in this room are good people. We might come from different views, and you're going to hear my views in a little bit, which are very different than some of yours. So take the good right now and try not to throw a rock at me after. But the reality is, everybody I know that's involved in this right now are doing it for the right reasons. And as Megan said, like she sees both sides of it. She wants the kids not to be left behind, and she has parents that are on a fixed income. I'm in that same, my kids are getting ready to go into school. My parents are on a fixed income. Like, this is real. This is real life stuff. I think there's a communication thing that's going to really positively affect us coming next year, which is I think that these boards and committees throughout the town are going to start communicating better by necessity. And just by the nature of knowing that we have to come together and to make really hard decisions. So that's the nice part. The bad part is that I think that our state is failing us massively. I think that we're being penalized for being good at special education. I think they're not fully funding our transportation as a regional school district. There's just a lot of things that are left. And the money's there because they'll put a $435 million budget together last week for migrant housing. And I'm not trying to get political, but that's it. Some of that money could be used. They know municipalities are crumbling right now. Halifax might be taken over by the state and the federal government. They might have to. We don't know what's happening, but right now it does not look good for Halifax. So I think pressure needs to be put on our state to take us seriously. We're supposed to be the education state. And I feel like they're looking at us as, yeah, we're just not important to them right now. And it feels it because we're taxpayers in a middle class, upper middle class society, area that can't pay our bills and can't pay for overtime for ambulances, and we can't pay for more staff for police. These are all things that everybody wants to be able to pay for, and we can't. And there's systematic, it's not just growth in town. Growth is part of it, and I think we're working on it as a town to bolster that coming up. There's definitely things coming up that are going to help with growth, but it's not just growth. It's the focus of the Commonwealth on what's important, and that's shifted, and it needs to shift back, and I hope it does quickly, or we're going to have towns in a real tough position. With that said, as I go from nice things said about everybody to crumbling downwards, I am not for an override. I believe that we have to be sustainable upon, we have to be able to pay our bills. Next year it's just going to compound. We don't have the revenue to take this on. And if we do that, just as if I did my own home or my own mortgage or my own taxes or my own loans, I'm in trouble. And our town, our municipalities will be in trouble. And in fact, we'll be in more trouble because we're going to compound this more. It's going to cost more to lay off. We're going to have to lay off more police officers. This is not in the next year going to solve itself. And that's my biggest fear is going, if a year from now we're sitting here and we're having to pay a lot more and cut a lot more people for something that maybe we could have stopped right now, it's going to hurt like hell. This is not good. This is not good. This is not what anybody wants. But if we can stop right now, recalibrate, restructure some things, bring in revenue, go to our governor, go to her, definitely, and go to our reps and start advocating for our children and for our public safety. Because we always talk about, we talk about schools being left behind. Well, look what public safety is being left behind on. Look what they're being left behind on with this entire crisis of, you have a ton of people coming in, they don't pay for people coming into I'm talking about migrants coming into our areas, and I'm talking about new growth, but the state doesn't see a public safety issue. They don't give us money in the funding for police officers, fire, paramedics. And this is serious stuff, and it shouldn't be political. I'm not trying to make it political. It's just real, because it affects me, it affects you, it affects everybody in this room. And we need to hold people accountable, but I think for this year, in my opinion, which is not held high by many people, but for right now, my opinion is that we need to cut this off, and we need to move forward with what we have. We do not have a sustainable budget to increase anything. We have to stick with what we have. We have to be fiscally responsible for this year. And we need to regroup, revamp, bring everybody to the table as much as we can and figure out this problem.
All right, I'm going to go to Kim next. We're just going to go down the line. Kim, did you want to speak or do you want to wait?
I am going to be there in about 3 minutes, so if
Okay.
I could defer to the other two until I get there.
Absolutely. All right. Done. Anything to say, Missy?
Yeah, I mean, my concern comes from different places, right? I'm a teacher in the neighboring district. I see the need for what they're asking. My question to the school committee is, what are you going to bring to the table for us? Like, at the last meeting that I watched seemed to say, we don't want the revenue. We don't want to do the transportation cost to families. We don't want to do the kindergarten costs. And I think that's concerning to me, like, sitting here, that isn't on the table still. And if it isn't, or if it is, I guess that's my big question. I think in order for people in town to support Proposition 2.5, they need to see that. So I think that's a concern for me, that was kind of like not an option, or I felt like it wasn't when we were here. And also the special education budget. We're the top 4 in the state fiscal year of '23. So Kingston, Plimpton, Halifax are top 4 of what we spend on special education. And there needs to be changes of how that's done. And we can work together to do that, but that's big. That's big. So those are really just my questions and concerns about a Prop 2.5 for that.
Did you guys want to reply to that while we're waiting for Kim, or?
Sure. As far as the revenue possibilities, I mean, we can certainly revisit those. Nothing is final until town meeting has taken place and we know what the final number is. I think we anticipate, continuing this discussion. There were some other, revenue numbers that we're still waiting on that made it really difficult, which is partly why we did not get more in depth into some of the conversations, because we don't want to prematurely make any decisions that now we can't go back from that have impacts on people or populations. Hopefully when we meet in March, we will have our final shared cost budget, and I think we'll have a much better idea of where Silver Lake is at to help us, guide our decisions moving forward. As for special education, we do have a new director of student services. This is her 2nd year in our district, and she has been working really hard to systematically go through all the different pieces of special education. She's going through the IEPs and the 504s. She's checking minutes and, services to make sure that we are meeting requirements, but not going above and beyond when we're not in a position to do that. It takes time, but she has been working very, very hard to do that. It's not an instant result that, I don't know how long that will take before that is very visible. I mean, On the flip side, costs are also going up, so while she is trying to bring things down, other things are still going up, which might give the appearance of change not happening when it is in fact happening.
So I did write down a bunch of wonderful things that we said. We did talk about that. The bus revenues would be about 87,000 if you live under 2 miles, but we also have to pick up the kids, and we still have other costs of having to pick up the kids and bring them home again. And so it's really not a huge cost that we would get this large amount of money from, and it would be a huge issue. And when it came to half-day, I think we said we save about 240,000 in salaries, but we would also lose Chapter 70 funding. So there's not a lot of moves on that. So it is, we are looking at other things, and we did look at the team leads, and we've looked at other things too, but it's not massive $1 million cuts that we're gonna be like, oh, that's gonna make a huge difference on this. You know, we did just get the 338,000 from the state. We're hopeful to get another check on that. We are gonna put all that towards, you know, what we can. You know, it has to be a lot of just certain things, and, you know, she was trying to be conservative. I'm like, no, throw all that money in, it's here. And so I think the days of being conservative on anything is by the wayside, and if you get, you know, I think we are looking, but I want to let you know that when we looked at those things, it wasn't a huge asset to the town to spend that kind of time and effort to put all that in for somewhat of a small amount of in return. And
I feel like that's an important piece, though. I mean, that came before the cuts for teachers. Like, there's a tier 2 option, and then
tier
the tier 3.
one's already gone. Those were already gone.
Right, so that was the tier 2, and then the tier 3 is cutting teachers. So it's like,
The
bring
tier
the
2 is still
revenue
cutting teachers.
or cut the teachers.
Tier 2 is staff
Tier
as
2
well.
is still cutting
Tier
teachers.
2 and 3 are staff.
Even with that revenue coming in.
Yes, it's still cutting.
I mean, but we can certainly revisit
Yeah,
this
it
conversation.
seems like a low number for charging half-day kindergarten just as compared to other communities. So it's definitely something to consider.
One of the problems with half-day K, I was on the committee when we created full-day K, is the busing, because you have to pay for buses
Yep.
midday.
Yep.
But then also, and then like she said, the Chapter 70 funding, I mean, you probably just have to do it, look at the actual numbers, and
Yeah.
it could be good. But then the downside, I
that.
remember the big thing that was hyped way back when, was that having them all day long, the teachers could spot kids with special needs earlier to get them into services earlier. Not that, I mean, that's part of the problem too, right? But back when we originally did this, it was to identify them earlier to get services so that they could then, pardon my verbiage here, but it was like to get them back in the regular day classroom, to get the services earlier. And I don't know how that's played out.
Identifying early to get
Yeah.
services faster, I get it, yeah. I know what you're
So that
saying.
you're not spending more later. And to be honest with you, I have no idea how that's actually played out, you know, because there's not necessarily a study that I'm aware of. But special ed has exploded in
Yeah,
Kingston.
I think,
so-
I mean, the biggest thing is the academic replacement, and
Right.
I know Dr. Paranese is working on that, but that was a huge piece of that. I think 27 kids out of district is
We only have 4.
significant now.
Okay.
But it was 27, and that's
what-
significant.
We built in these programs, and then we need teachers for those programs. So
Yep.
if we get rid of those teachers and those programs, they're going out of district, and we're still gonna spend money. So
200,000 per student on average
yeah,
out of
I
district
am on the
placement.
Pilgrim Area Collaborative Board of Directors as well, and, you know, they are taking a hit on themselves, so they're actually charging more in their tuitions because we are keeping them in district. And I just had a meeting with them the other day, and they are really having a hit on themselves, so they're just upping their tuitions because we are keeping them in our district. And so we built all these wonderful programs to keep our kids in district, which costs us more money, but it costs us less money than sending them out of district. But it's a give and take, and like you say, I completely understand, and maybe I'm just old, and I was the days of half-day kindergarten and buses and lotteries and people not getting their kids through the lottery and those types of times. It is, you know, it's definitely, like we say, like, we have to go to the table for anything and everything. I totally believe that. And Fatai was saying that, the state is not giving us enough, and they're not. They've never given us enough. We don't get reimbursed for the, for the kids at Rising Tide or for those other school districts as well. And to be honest, it is really tough, and you are correct. And right now, the Chapter 70 funding is, again, we can fight for that money all we want. We're a small town when we're not the high in the block here. So I appreciate that, though.
Kim, did you want to say something?
I apologize, I'm just getting over something, so I sound terrible, so I won't subject you to this voice for very long. One thing I wanted to point out, I think there's a misconception that this year's budget is a level services budget. So every year in the fall, we have a joint meeting. In the past, bylaw was a representative from all these different committees and boards. This year was the first year where it was a joint meeting of school committee, finance committee, and board of selectmen. Unfortunately, no one was there from the school committee, but at that meeting, we discussed what's the budget parameter for this year's budget creation. So was that, I think it was October, maybe, we talked about this? October 30th. So there was a long discussion about concerns and whether we wanted to, we knew we couldn't do level services because last year's budget brought us right up to the levy limit almost, and that this year would push us over. So did we want to pursue an override? What do we want to do? And it was a unanimous vote from the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee to try to avoid, let me put it this way. It was a unanimous vote to try to avoid an override. And that number to avoid an override was 4%. That's where that 4% number came from. It came from that joint meeting of these boards and committees. So I think recently people have been saying, well, this is the level services number, and I get that. And level services across all of the town would be a lot higher than where we are now. We've cut positions as well. We've cut services. We're talking about eliminating the very popular evening hours at the transfer station, which will cause all kinds of drama when that happens because everyone loves the transfer station. The planning department is down to one staff member. So, I mean, we are cutting things as well. Those are just a few off the top of my head. If we don't support the override, which I don't know if this board would vote in, regardless of whether or not it goes on the warrant, I don't know if this board, the majority, would vote in favor of an override. I don't believe they would. Which also means the police station is not fully staffed. Hasn't added staff since 1996. So in some ways you could argue the police department has had less staff provided to them in terms of when we're looking at the whole picture than the schools have. We just added some teachers. I don't want to cut teachers. I don't think anybody wants to cut teachers. The problem is we have a set amount of money that we can work with. And in the last 2 weeks, I've spent a lot of time on the phone. I think people who know me know that I try to reach out and find out what do people want to do. How do you feel about this? For the most part, nobody wants to cut teachers. I can tell you that. Nobody wants to cut teachers. Even people who don't have any kids in the school district, no teachers in their families, nothing. They don't want to cut teachers either, but they don't want an override. So the question that I have with everyone in this room is if we have this set amount of money, what are we going to do? Are we going to say, okay, fine, we need to reallocate the money that we have for other departments because we know that the schools need this money? I don't know that they do. To be honest with you, the budget for the schools between Silver Lake and local schools is extremely confusing. It is very hard to follow, and I can't quite make complete sense of it. And I don't know if you guys can, hopefully you can, but I think in order for us to support, hey, other departments, you need to give some of your money to schools, we'd really need the supporting documentation to support that. And I don't have it. I don't have it. Like, has the school done everything to not cut teachers? Do we have other areas that we could potentially think outside the box? I don't know. I truly don't know. I know she's wanting to talk, but I just want to make sure that we sort of level set on that. This was never going to be a level services budget this year, and this is why I didn't really want to do this in the car. So I think that's it. I think I covered everything.
All right.
And Carrie really wants to be recognized. I don't know if you want to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I know I have to hit the button, that I've learned. So I'm Dr. Carrie Whipple. I'm the principal, the very proud principal at KES. This is my 6th year. All I do is brag about Kingston. I love it here so much that I wear Kingston. I do have nice bracelets at home, but these ones are beaded ones that say Kingston and have Silver Lake Kingston colors. It would be neglectful for me not to advocate for As a principal, as a special ed teacher, as a mom of 3 kids in a neighboring school, it would really be neglectful for me not to paint a picture of what this would look like for everybody. I understand the financial situation we're in. I can promise you, I have never padded a budget in 6 years. My pocketbook is tight as a parent with 3 children. I can't afford any raises, but I also need to advocate for children. I look forward to having your kindergarten student next year, and I'll miss your buddy next year. But I hear things like things that we want. There's nothing we want. I'm just trying to keep my building standing and running with the support our students need. If we cut 4 kindergarten paras, that means I have 4 kindergarten paras left who are going to spend the entire day mostly from 10:30 to 1 o'clock outside, which means I'm having 25, 26 kindergarten kids with 1 adult. Kindergartners are 5. They've been alive for 5 years. They barely know how to be human beings. They're learning to socialize, transition. They can't walk from their classroom to the nurse's office, to the office, to the bathroom independently. They need somebody to walk them there. My biggest concern is safety. I always say it is my job to provide a safe environment, whether it's emotionally or physically. And my biggest concern is arrival and dismissal those first few weeks. I'm already very scared about that with potentially 190 kindergartners, with significantly less bodies in my building. So we'll be looking for volunteers, I guess, but, and substitutes. Safety is a huge concern. So there's going to be a significant amount less staff available to support them. Having less paras, I mean, there's no kindergarten paras. I know on paper probably says 4 kindergarten paras, but they're at recess. There's no small group learning anymore. It's gone. Okay, our data is incredible. We had data meetings where I was almost in tears because our data is absolutely incredible. What we are doing is absolutely working. We are providing multi-sensory approach and small group learning. Our reading is, kids are jumping 2 levels. It's incredible. That won't happen, I can promise you. It will not happen. It cannot happen with only 1 adult in a classroom with a lot of 5-year-olds who are still trying to figure out how to transition, how to open their snack bag, put on their coat, have potentially bathroom accidents. Okay, it makes me very scared. Handwriting, something as simple as handwriting. Para is the ones walking around, so as the teacher's instructing, they are going around fixing the handwriting, telling them how to do it. I encourage you to come to my school, look on the walls. Our handwriting the past 2 years is incredible, and all I do is brag about it because of what we're doing in reading. Custodian, it's my new title, okay, because I'm only going to have 1 custodian. I'm not going to be an instructional leader. I won't be helping teachers in classrooms. I won't be able to do my job as an evaluator. I'll struggle to follow policies and procedures that legally I have to do because I have to go refill the soap or the paper towels or clean up the throw up, which I have no problem doing, ask any staff. I often am the custodian when someone's out because it takes teamwork, but that's a reality. 1 custodian, they have vacation days contractually, they get sick days. It is now on the principals, the administration. I know people say we're pushing problems down the line. That's true. The numbers are going to increase. As a special ed teacher, team chair, my whole background is special ed, I'm very passionate about it. If we don't provide small group instruction and progress monitor kids, it's going to create huge gaps. 2 cuts of my reading specialists. I can't stomach that. I'm a K-2 building. Taking those 2 reading specialists who just got so many kids out of small group reading on level in the gen ed classes, that just saved us thousands of dollars.
That was my kid too.
Thousands. It's absolutely neglectful to not have a reading specialist, at least 1, in an elementary building. So that is extremely concerning. Cutting kindergarten teacher, we're looking at, and I don't have the numbers yet because I'm still waiting on registrations, but right now I have 81 registrations. This year I have 190 kindergartners. If that happens again, we're talking 27, 28 with 1 adult. I can't stomach that. 1 second grade teacher, you're talking about 23, 24 students per class. Forget about the small group learning. The multi-sensory approach is going to be much more difficult. We do benchmark testing every 3 years, hence the data meetings, right? If I don't have 2 reading specialists, maybe the 4 paras that are outside recess can do all the testing 3 times a year. They could help during that other hour because I don't know how I'm supposed to do benchmark assessments with 530 kids in a building 3 times a year, and that's the bare minimum. We progress monitor all the time. We take it seriously. Our job is to close the gaps. I think that was most of my speech here. I take education very seriously. Kids need to get what they want. I also, please know, I understand
having parents on fixed incomes. I would consider myself almost on a fixed income with everything I have going on. But I don't know what the right answer is, and I agree. I think we need to come to the table more often because I understand everyone else's perspective as they don't necessarily understand mine. Like when you say like, I don't understand the budget, like I can go through every single line. I can tell exactly what that number's for.
I don't mean just for KES.
Okay. I'm just saying,
I
I just,
understand.
like, I love doing the budget. To me,
Great.
it's like very black and white, and I can promise you there is absolutely no, I'm not adding stuff to have fun. I mean, you should, Polar Express, magical day. Guess what? The parents all bought everything for it to save the money for other things.
So to be clear, your passion for the children, the parents, this town has never been a question.
No,
Not to me, not to anyone in this room, not anyone watching this meeting, okay? And that's everybody here, everybody at home, like the passion for the kids and the students and the teachers, that's never been in question. The problem is we're sort of stuck within limits. And we brought this up before, and I came to the school committee meeting last year, and I was concerned about this year. And I said, if we pass this budget, we will be right up against the levy limit. What about next year? And it was like, oh, whatever. Well, not that you said this, but there was a sort of sense of, we'll deal with that later. Well, this is later, and now we're here. And there's a reason I voted no on last year's budget, because I knew we would be forced to do this year. So I guess my challenge for the school committee, because we don't make cuts. The Board of Selectmen doesn't make cuts to the school budget. We just have the number based on what the financial situation looks like, and we try to stay within the similar range of what we've done before, which the schools typically take about 53% of the total amount that we have to work with. That 53% brings a 4% increase. So I don't want to cut teachers. I don't want to cut teachers at all. I don't think anyone does. My challenge to the school committee is, what can we do other than cut teachers? You know, does charging for busing mean the principal isn't cleaning the toilets?
I don't mind.
But that's just a really perfect example. The question is like, what do we want to pay for with the money that we have? I don't have that answer, and I don't think anyone wants to cut teachers. So my question is, what else is there? I don't know. But I would love to hear what those things could be, and I'm not in charge of the school budget. We are not. All we do is say, this is what we have to work with, and then in terms of how the budget gets spent, the school committee decides that with the help of, and while they tell the administration essentially, this is what's important to us, this is what's important to the community. We said to the town administrator, we want to stay under the levy limit, and we don't want to have staff cuts, so tell us what you got. And he put together a budget that limited staff cuts. Keith, am I misrepresenting that?
No.
Okay. So, I mean, yes, we did have to make some cuts, but we tried to limit them, and that's what Keith did.
No, in the past 2 years have been kind of Band-Aid years. I mean, you voted against it, I voted for it. You know, because I thought we would be able to get through it, and here we are. And one of the things I respect about you, Dr. Whipple, is, and both of our chiefs, is, you know, sometimes people get frustrated when department heads or heads of their areas get passionate about stuff and they don't care about budgets. Well, that's good. I mean, you should care about, obviously, being fiscally responsible. No, your job is to care about kids. His job is to care about police officers and safety. His job is to fire in safety. Like, that's your job. And I respect that, and we all do. I think it's very, it's encouraging and passionate to hear. And there's not like a nice thing to say after that. I'm impressed by it and I love it, but it's your job to come and advocate. And I think that people should realize that. That's how we feel about it when our department heads come and advocate. It's like, that's your job. It's our job to recommend things that can be paid for and not end up in a place, not to be picking on Halifax, but Halifax or there's other schools that are at the point where they're not going to make it. And I hope Halifax does. But there's a few other schools in the state, and I know a bunch of other ones in the country, they're not making it. They're shutting the doors. Or they're going to 4 days a week like they did in Tulsa, Oklahoma when I lived there. And I had a 0% graduation class from the 90 kids that I tutored, okay? Because they went to 4, you know, but that was because of mismanagement of funds. And so, you know, that's part of what we're, on our end of it, or my end of it, I can't speak for the board. Pretty diverse group of people with thoughts, but, you know, I don't want to get to that point. I don't want to get to that point. That's, you know, that's a very scary realization that we're seeing in communities that are very similar to ours right now, where they are either cutting everything or they're shutting the doors, and they're going to be inviting the state and federal government in.
Can I just make a point of clarification, is that they're the ones that told us what they need. And so they came to us and said, this is all I can do. They didn't have anything else to give us. So when they came to us, this is what they said to us. This is what they have. There's nothing else to give for them. They don't have it. So I just want to let you know, when they said to us, we didn't say to them, here's 4 teachers and five paras, good luck. And so they're the ones that had to go through their buildings with a fine tooth comb. So I just want to let you know, they're the ones that have to make those tough decisions. We support them either way of how they're dealing with it. We try to help them with the budget and with Sarah, but I just want to let you know that it's for them.
Before I recognize you, I just wanted to make a clarifying statement, but guys, correct me if I'm wrong, someone brought up the shared cost budget. A lot of our folks have no idea what we're talking about. So the shared cost budget, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 4 districts: Kingston Elementary, there's Halifax Elementary, and there's Plimpton Elementary, then there's Silver Lake Regional. There's a shared cost amongst all of those districts for like admin. So that's a budget that's done separately, and then the union, all of those other school committees, the 4 school committees, meet, and then they vote on that shared cost budget. So that's everything from the superintendent, anything that's shared across the building, so the admin building itself and whatnot. And then it's allocated, it's a complicated assessment, but Silver Lake pays some, Kingston pays some, Halifax and Plimpton obviously through the assessment. So that's an unknown, and that's what you guys were mentioning. You don't have those numbers yet because you're not meeting until
The 25th.
the 25th. So those numbers could change, which could then change what your budget is, either down or up. Hopefully down.
I don't think it'll go up, but hopefully down.
One other thing that can change also is the outer districts. We don't know how many outer districts.
Right.
And that doesn't come in until April 1st, so we don't know that number. So those are 2 big numbers that we don't know.
Right. All right, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Andy Materna, Kingston Intermediate Principal. Just to echo what we've been saying, we do go through these exercises and really press each other as a team, as an administrative team, of where else can you cut? What else can you do? Where else can you go? I mean, the whole Tier 1, all those cuts, it's $57,000 just in like paper goods and lawn supplies and that kind of stuff. And we really do press each other to look in every corner, in every area of our faculty, of the staff, of the building, of what we feel that we need to like keep things safe, like Carrie was saying. And there's always going to be impact, right? And impact may not be seen immediately. Impact may be seen 5 years down the road, especially when it comes to education for our students. And I think that what we're trying to find here with what we're presenting is that balance between being a manager and being a leader, and how do we find that balance as the leaders of our buildings. But we really do press each other as an exercise of where else can we look.
All right.
Do you mind if I speak?
Yeah,
I just
go
want
ahead.
to address some of what Kim had to say about cutting teachers and finding other things. I'd just like to shift your perspective, because it's not about cutting teachers as much as it is cutting services, supports, and interventions for the students. It is through a teacher, but ultimately that is what we're cutting, is the impact on the students. I love our teachers. I could speak extremely highly about many of them. But it's what happens in these classrooms and in these doors. We have poured through this budget. Our principals have poured through this budget. Our director of finance, our superintendent. We truly have pulled out everything that can be pulled out until you hit the point of staff. And unfortunately, you can't do more with less. That's just how it shakes out. And just like everybody here has a representation of a different group, we are here to represent the students. And, this is a population that cannot speak for themselves. So I take that very seriously, and I think everybody here does. It's not that we haven't tried to find what we can that's not staff, that's not going to impact the day-to-day learning of our students. We have, and this is what we're left with for anyone that hasn't seen, you know, our presentation. It is public, it's on the district website, and it is spelled out very clearly what the cuts are, what the class sizes will look like. So it's not about mismanagement of funds. I heard that before, and maybe at one time that was an issue. I don't know, and I can't speak to anything before my time, but I can say now there is a large group of people who all have eyes on this and are trying to, you know, really get into the nitty-gritty. What is this exactly? What positions is this? What do they do? Do we need all of them?
That was me and Eric.
What?
That was me and Eric.
I mean, we are working through it. I mean, we've been working through it. We're going to continue working through it. You know, these conversations are ongoing. We want to work with the town. You know, again, we understand the financial side and that there's a finite amount of money, and we need more than that. And how do we make all of this work? But, you know, I think it's just important for you guys to know it's not for lack of putting in that effort to pull out everything that we really can, that our schools can function, and we will still be able to provide a free and appropriate education to all of our students, which they are entitled to. So.
Megan, again, no one's questioning your dedication or passion, just to be clear.
Thank you.
And I don't know who said mismanagement of funds. I have no evidence to support that concept, so just to be clear, I am not saying funds are being mismanaged.
No, I
don't know
just,
that.
like, it is
Okay.
a conception that has been put out there, so I
and
just kind of
haven't
want to
seen
address
so I
that,
just
so.
Want to be clear.
I think that's also a lot of people, like on Facebook, who don't even live in the town. There's a lot
Well,
of
that's the
people in
secret,
Plymouth.
too.
No,
yeah.
I'm sure it is, but again,
Yeah.
once it's put out there,
Yeah.
you know,
I know.
rumors just spread like wildfire, so.
Gotcha.
So I think the other thing to take into account is the financial side, and I actually don't really have anything formally prepared, but so Keith or Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we looked at $1 million override on a $500,000 house, which there aren't many of them in Kingston, they're up, or even say like an $800,000 house, so I'm multiplying by 1.6. It was $140 per $1 million.
149.
What?
149.
So 149 times.
Does that include
But
the
that's
added
on-
cost that you mentioned
No.
in order to support next year's budget?
No.
No,
So
and
that's
that
per
also-
million, that's per million. So if we did, let's just say we did $1 million override, we really need
he has
1.6, and we don't know what Silver Lake is
Come on,
looking
Carl.
at. So let's just say Silver Lake gets not, they're not asking for something, I don't know. But it would be the 149, well, geez. 149 times, and I'm doing an $800,000 house instead of the other one, so I'm multiplying by 1.6. 1.6. So a $500,000 house would be 149. An $800,000 house would be 238. That's per million. So if we're at 1.6, then you multiply that by 1.6. So times 1.6, that's 381 for the year. But their tax is already going to go up. Correct me if I'm wrong. The tax levy, another 800,000
So 800, you're right, 800,000, if we.
under the tax levy.
He's trying to get to 800,000 under,
I apologize.
so that he has room for next
Okay,
year.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is that?
Because, again, I think we're still looking at the same issue, and I believe Carl brought this up when he spoke at Open Forum, is that this isn't just about this year, we're talking about next year. And anytime you increase the budget over the levy limit, you're going to continue.
And that's,
to go up.
and that's not for all the things that are on the table for an override
Right.
either.
Right.
Not
So-
even
That's true.
close. Not even close.
So if we're just looking at the Kingston schools, but we're asking for 1.6, like I said, and we don't have to, but I think it's a prudent thing to do, then we're looking at, for someone with an $800,000 house, which is probably more accurate, we're looking at just over $600 just for that, but that includes the 800,000 under the tax levy that we're taxing up. So people's taxes are going to go up anyways. It's going to go up about $220 for an $800,000 house, if I have that right, and then another $380 for this override. And then if there's another override, it could be even more.
Which is looking like another few million if everything passed, so that'd be.
Yeah, but so again, Silver Lake has a different challenge because of Halifax and Plimpton, and it's going to be really tough to get an override over there. And obviously, we depend on at least one other town to pass the budget, whatever Kingston, and Kingston has pretty much always approved budgets. I mean, the town meeting has very rarely challenged a school budget, and they've always passed the
Halifax
school
historically
overrides.
goes down the school budget, correct?
They do.
Right.
Yeah. Occasionally, they'll vote it up if it was low, but it's usually against, and Plimpton is looking against. And in Kingston, it's tough. I think they're trying to get down to 2%. We allocated 4%. So I can't imagine them actually getting to 2%. Because
The budget they
cuts-
looked at was 2%, but I know Halifax voted for 1.75 when they
Right.
did theirs last night, so.
So we don't know what's going to happen with Silver Lake. But anyways, I just wanted folks to understand that. And this year, folks' taxes went up because we had a lot of room under the tax levy that we were able to go. So there was a lot of discussion and complaints in January when they got their tax bills. The reality set in, and they didn't have to vote on an override. We had it available. We could tax them without an override. So people were complaining, and then literally the next week, we were talking about an override. And their sewer bills went up a huge percentage.
And water.
Water department bills went up, and then folks' natural gas has gone up as well.
Which we don't
because
have,
the
which
state-
we
the
have
state-
nothing to do with that, but.
We have nothing to do with that, but the state.
Yeah, that's the one thing we didn't do it.
The state approved some stuff with
I've seen you
gas
put that
and
online before,
electric.
and I'm like, in parentheses, not the town of Kingston's gas.
So it's just the financial impact, so, and that's not including any other overrides. I personally, I'm fine with paying it, but we're in a two-family working house. My kids are almost done with school, so, but we have the whole town that's talking to us, so this is a tough one. This is really tough. I wouldn't have done school committee for free forever if I didn't care. So this is tough. Oh, zip it.
I made the joke already.
Yeah, do we want to jump into kind of some of the options? I mean,
I think
because.
John didn't get to talk yet. I don't know if he wants to chat. That's just one.
What? Well, so here,
I'm trying to get a sense of who's saying.
No, I'd pass it over. No, I mean, it's a tough position because, I mean, personally, I can afford this. My family thankfully can't afford these type of changes. I have to look for the whole town or look at the whole town's picture. The multi-year situation is probably the biggest issue that I have because a single override, to me, and in my family, it doesn't impact me. So a single override is a no-brainer, but it's not going to be a single override. And that's the reality of it, and that's the biggest concern. I don't remember which one of you guys brought it up at the last meeting, and I'm sure there hasn't been full discussions on it, but have other things like freezes or partial freezes or any of those things been discussed or starting to be discussed as ways to come up with this? Those are kind of
To avoid layoffs.
Yeah, to avoid layoffs. I mean, those are communities do that, and it's a hard thing to look at, but it's something to look at.
So they're contractually obligated, so the
No,
unions would
yeah.
have to come to the table.
Yeah, the unions have to come to
Right.
the table, but have they been approached to look at it? Whether that's I don't know, what is the COLA, is it 3%?
it was 3%, but the whole salary line increase was $1 million, from what I remember. But-
For local
3%, but then like the steps.
Yeah, but so that's out of, I don't remember what the salary line was before, but out of your whole budget, that's 6.5% increase just on salaries, which is, I don't know what part of that was, of the 15 million was just the salaries. I didn't.
68% of the budget is salary.
Okay, so about 10 million, so that's 10% salary increase in 1 year. That's a lot, so I don't know, one of the things that we'll want to do is talk to Sarah. I mean, years ago, when I negotiated teacher contracts, Christine would give me a spreadsheet of like all the teachers and say, this is exactly what this new contract is going to cost you in year one. And then, so we knew that it was going to be $1 million. It wasn't just a 3%, it was going to be 10%. And then the following year, we would know it, and then the third year, we would know it. So arguably, you know what the salary increase is going to be for next year already. So we probably need that going into next year. So that doesn't help us with this year's. But that was a big number, and then special ed was a big number. So I don't know if in the salaries you included new positions, but I don't think you did. I don't think those
Special
are
ed
new
was
people.
1.386 million with 37.8% increase.
There's
Say
nothing
that
new.
again?
Yeah.
Go ahead, say it again.
So I keep all my notes. I'm a note taker.
I didn't hear what you said.
So special education was a 37.8% increase over last year with a 1.386
Yeah.
increase. Mandated.
Right, I know.
So there's your 2 mil, right there.
Yep.
Mandated.
2.3. Were you going to say something? I heard you sigh.
I just said, wow.
Oh, I thought you were ready to say something.
Can I ask a quick
yeah,
question?
go ahead.
At the intermediate school, and I'm not sure at the elementary school, a new position was put into place last year maybe, like a team chair to oversee the IEP process, coming to the table, looking at that, deciding the data from the teachers, all the collection that happens in the classroom, and ensuring that that special education budget, although we have to provide a free and appropriate education for all students in their LRE, their least restrictive environment, but that team chair is overseeing that IEP process. It looks like a little bit more stringently than the last 3 years. Is that what that person's new role is? The team chair?
Oh, yeah, let Mr. Mitchell.
Intermediate school, right?
Yes, so at the intermediate school, we do have that team chair, which is looking for consistency across the 4 grades of IEPs, of writing IEPs. But it's even more than that. It's about supporting the students and supporting the families with consistency for the 4 years that students are at the intermediate school. Yep. So the team chair position oversees all of the IEPs and 504s that are currently run in Kingston Intermediate School.
Any other questions? You know, I had said before, I don't think we should necessarily vote on an override, vote on this tonight. Although, you know, we did say that we need to let folks know if there is going to be an override. Clearly, we need to know what Silver Lake is doing. In my opinion, we need to see the whole picture. Again, we won't know the shared costs, but I'm less worried about that. I feel like, or I hope that, maybe I'm just being optimistic, that it would go down, not up.
Do you want to talk about the kind of the polling the board right now, or do you want to move on from the, do you want to know the school? How do you, I mean, because we could.
Well, actually, I think, here's a good I know we kind of talked about it, and some of us were for it, some of us were against it, when we talked at our last meeting. Is there, why don't we go through each person, or see if you think right now you might be willing to put it on the town meeting warrant. Again, if we don't put it on the warrant, it can be changed at town meeting, and then it can go to the election. If we put it on the town meeting warrant, it's decided there, everybody knows, everyone's going to show up, then it would go on our regular town election, which is 3 weeks later. And then it would go, you know, up or down.
If it passes.
If it passes, right. Yeah, if it passes town meeting and it goes to the election, it has to pass both. You know, do we want to have conversation about asking them to reduce the number even more? Or we nodded?
The question, I guess, the question I would have in that is, does it matter? Does it matter what the number is to the board? Because,
Right. That's
so
the
I mean, if it's they voted just under $1 million, I don't have the number,
986.
900, okay.
87.
So just under $1 million, but you're talking about more to cover for next year. And then potentially an override regarding the police requests. I mean, there's more than just schools we're talking
Correct.
about. If we're talking about an override, we're talking about all of the requests for an override. I think the question becomes, do we support an override and putting that on the warrant regardless of what that number is?
Yeah, and I think there's a certain, there's a positive take on it, because I agree with Kim. So I don't agree with it as it is. I'm not going to agree with it next week or the week after, I don't think.
Because of the number?
Just, yeah, as an override, I don't think I don't agree with an override. I believe with us being fiscally, working with the money that we have.
Whether it's $1 million, $2 million, or $500,000.
We're going to come back next year, it's going to get worse. The cuts are, and if we cut people then, it's going to be worse then. If it's in 2 years, it's going to be worse then. We're just compounding upon it. So and I also don't, I think having this poll as a board right now is important, as Kim was saying, because if we don't, as a board, support waiting 2 more weeks to get clearer numbers. We know that if a majority of us know that we do not support that, we're not helping anybody over here or anybody else doing their budgets, because we're just telling them, next 2 weeks, work on your budget, I'm still going to vote no. That's me, right? So in 2 weeks, I'm still going to vote no. And it doesn't help, it just wastes time for 2
So you're
weeks.
saying voting now would provide clarity to what that number is?
It's very clear. If we know that we're a no as a board, it's very clear. At that point, everybody has to get to work on creating a budget from that 4%. And so if it's not clear and we want to wait 2 weeks, that's different. That's a different thing. Then yes, let's come back, let's look at the budget. But if the votes are to not bring a override to town meeting, it's kind of, and we know we have those votes, and we take a straw poll on it, then we're just kind of making the next 2 weeks worthless.
And just to be clear, it would require 4-1 or 5-0 to get onto the warrant.
Right,
We
it's
need
a super majority.
Right, we need a 2/3 vote, which means 4 people need to vote for it to get onto the town meeting warrant. I'm going to go out on a limb and
That's
say.
state law, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're a no.
Yes, Eric, I am. Okay. On the straw poll for right now, yes.
For anyone at home, that was a lot of laughing.
Yeah.
At least from my perspective, I don't necessarily support an override, but I don't not support putting it and letting the townspeople decide.
not
So I
support, so
do
you
support it being
You're
there.
double negative. You got teachers
Yeah,
in this
sorry.
room.
Yeah. Plymouth education, what can I say? And it's not that I don't necessarily support an
Wasn't it
override.
a private school, though, to give them?
High school, private high
okay.
school.
Sorry.
So we'll blame that, because that school's gone, Coyle and Cassidy.
There's the problem.
Yep, yeah, there you go.
Sorry, I don't mean to distract you.
Yeah, no, I just lost my train of thought.
You oppose an override, but you were in favor
I don't necessarily-
of the warrant? Is that what you said?
Before I can be for any override, I need to know the full amounts. I just personally want to know the full amounts. That being said, I don't oppose, I know we discussed this last meeting, I don't oppose putting it on the warrant, because I think that is something that the residents should be aware of, and they should be able to know with plenty of time what's coming to them, and whether they support it or don't support it. And that's my personal
Because
take
if
on
we
it.
don't put it on the warrant, it can still
It
be
gets-
done at town meeting
But it gets
anyways.
really sticky, though.
And then it gets dicey.
It
I
gets
think.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm in that same thought process that I think I need to see the full amount, see what else is going to happen in the next couple weeks, brought back to the table, kind of look at the total numbers we have, to say whether or not I'm in favor of it, but I am in favor of bringing it to the town meeting floor, because I think it's important for the residents to be able to vote on it.
Kim, what do you think?
What are your thoughts?
Can I ask a
You're
small,
for
like,
it.
nuts and bolts thing? Because I've heard mixed things from different sides. And I'm not saying this is the be-all, end-all solution, because charging for busing is not the be-all, end-all solution. But why is it 2 miles? Why can't it be the entire town and nominal fee?
We're legally obligated to bus anyone over 2 miles, state law.
Okay, so it's, okay. I've heard both sides of
Yeah.
it, though. That's why,
wasn't
I've
that
been
because
told that's not the law, so that's why I didn't know.
No, I checked today just to make
Okay,
sure.
okay.
Yeah, it's under 2 miles, and also you
And
cannot
the only
charge
reason I
low
asked that,
income and IEP.
and this is just like one example, and another example is more for the Silver Lake side, like why aren't we charging more for sports, things like that. But like nominal fees, like let's say you could bus everyone, and nominal fee of like $100, you're not going to lose people. More people aren't going to drive their kids over the $100, but then that's $100,000 back into the revenue or whatever it is. So I'm just wondering if I'm sure you guys have been thinking about other revenue sources, but you know those are the kind of the things that I'd be looking at.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing, if that can be brought to the table, real numbers and not just kind of thoughts on it.
And I also think that if an override were to pass, I actually personally don't necessarily think it would, but if an override were to pass, what is planned to not have it next year? I mean, freezes, what are the options for next year? Because it's not gonna pass year after year. It just won't. And like Tyler said, what'll end up happening is it'll end up becoming more crippling we'll have to cut 20 people, or we'll have to cut, and then it becomes a bigger disaster. So what are the solutions down the road? Like, I guess for me, to be more in favor personally for the town as an override is, how do we stop it from continuing to happen?
Give people water?
I think one of the biggest things is, the school committee and board of selectmen working together, but not waiting until that, we're into budget season. I think, as soon as we get this sorted out, I think we should start talking about FY27, because it's not a quick process, and there is a lot of information that we're looking for, and, 10 heads are better than 5 in terms of ideas of, what are things we can look at for revenue or for cuts or for, any kind of a restructuring of something to make it more, cost-effective and efficient. So I know that doesn't solve this year's problem, but my hope is that that's something that we can put into place starting for next year and hopefully moving forward, that will allow us to make a longer-term plan and hopefully get ahead of it to some degree.
Well, I mean, that's what the fall meeting is for, right? The joint meeting.
Right, but I mean
is to have that discussion.
No, I know, but I have like a more specific with and I sent Eric an email about this, 2 people from school committee, 2 people from board of selectmen, chair of the finance committee, superintendent, director of finance, just to focus on the school budget specifically, not necessarily obviously input about the town budget, but with the focus on school budget to help, move forward in a more collaborative manner.
Well,
And can we make sure that's, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, knowing what again, this was $1 million increase this year. We know where everybody is in the steps and lanes. So she should be able to use a spreadsheet like Christine used to do and could say, this is what your increase is gonna be next year. Exactly, and you should know it now. You know what I mean? If we're looking at another $1 million next year, but you're the million is what you're looking for, So, and I'm not saying to freeze everybody's wages, because I'm just saying that's the same amount. So it's things like that we need to know early, because we need to look at the whole town, in costs across the entire town. What were you gonna say, Dawn?
No, you basically said what I was gonna say.
Can I just real quickly just point a point that when it comes down to also with the parents, I do want to say, to giving them as much time as possible as well, if we're going to, again, have those discussions about half-day kindergarten and busing and paying for those things. Again, two household income right now. I have 1 kid in the, but that affects families existentially, and it affects their jobs, it affects if they're going to work or not work, it affects a lot. And even though we might say, okay, well, that September was already thought of last September. And I think those discussions, again, I think it's something that we talked about today, and it's very important for people, but those are not things I take lightly at all either, because it affects a life, it affects their livelihood. And so those are things that I think if we're gonna have those discussions, like you say, about real deep, and we have to have those deep cuts, but it's just one of those things where I wanna be able to tell parents and teachers and everyone as early on as possible, this is what it is. We're not gonna have full-day kindergarten, we're not gonna have buses. And so people can be ready and prepared for what's gonna come.
So our typical warrant articles that go on the warrant, we vote on whether or not to put them on, right? So we open the warrant, we accept articles from departments, we put them on the warrant. If we don't vote for them, they don't show up on the warrant, nobody gets to vote on them. Because the way that the town meeting works is if you can't reasonably expect an article to be discussed, or a topic to be discussed, it won't be. An example of that in the past that we've talked about this before, but there was a patch of land near Route 44. Someone came to us and said, hey, we want you to sell that or give it away, bring it to town meeting. We all voted, this board, well, not this exact board, but the board at the time, voted in favor of putting it on the warrant and then ultimately voted against it. If we hadn't put it on the warrant, town meeting wouldn't have been able to vote on it, wouldn't have been able to discuss it. The budget and Prop 2.5 and override discussions is a little bit different because we will discuss the budget regardless. And anyone at any point can make an amendment to change that budget, whether that's down or up. In the way that the law works with Prop 2.5, if someone makes an amendment that kicks the budget higher than the levy limit, it automatically forces a ballot vote. So it doesn't prevent people from voting, because you can always vote it. It doesn't stop it from people knowing it's coming. That's why there's a ballot vote following town meeting vote. So while I had the position last week, similar to my colleagues on my left, I now share Tyler's sentiment of, I don't support it being on the ballot, on the warrant, and I would vote against it, should it be on the warrant.
So the one thing I'd want to know is if that is the case, so our meeting is April 26th, right? So if it.
April?
25th?
Do you mean?
April.
Oh, town meeting,
26th,
sorry.
town meeting, yeah,
I was
sorry.
like, our next meeting is not until April.
Yeah, I wish.
Sorry.
We get budget
I didn't
season.
follow
I
that.
wish.
I didn't follow that.
Okay, so April 26th.
Yep.
And geez, I'm not very good at math, but let's say we don't put it on the warrant and they, and somebody does
Sure,
up
over
the
is
budget,
forced.
then the vote goes 35 days after that.
Mhm.
So it would not be on the May 17th, it would be the first week of June. So I don't know what day.
Assuming it passes.
Assuming it passes.
Is it 2/3 majority vote at town meeting, or just a simple
Simple
majority?
majority,
Okay.
on both at town meeting and on a ballot.
But here's the thing, so I don't know the date, is it like June 8th or something? I don't know what date, like if it doesn't pass in the election that's in June, then at that point, or maybe before that point, the school has to issue pink slips. Actually, they do, because this happened before. So they issued pink slips anyways and said, well, we're hoping it passes and it did pass, and then they revoked the pink slips. Okay, so I just answered my own question. So they'll issue the pink slip, whatever the contractual date is, and then they'll revoke them. So I think that answered my question. The only downside with that is if it's not on the warrant and people are not, I'm telling you, people are not paying attention. Because the past years, the 20 years I've been involved in municipal government, anytime we're talking about cutting anything in school, literally anything, it's wall-to-wall people and 2 hours of parents talking. I was here the last two overrides, and it was at Kingston Intermediate Library, and it was packed. We don't have anybody here. And even the people online, this is nothing. Like, people just either don't care, don't agree with it, something. There's more noise in Halifax about their overrides. The parents are up in a fit about cuts, not here. I just don't get it.
And to be fair with you, there's more communication now than there ever has been.
Yeah.
I mean, between putting out the
Well,
weekly
it's a-
newsletter that Dawn's been putting out.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people posting about it. There's a lot of information going out. There's news articles getting posted.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of information about this budget.
Well, even look back at our MBTA vote in town. Not many people came, it passed, and then everyone's mad that they didn't know about it. I'm like, we put it everywhere. So people don't care because they think it's whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen and they have no input. It's really bizarre. It's like a Kingston-only issue. But that's my point with this. If we don't put it on the warrant, people aren't gonna see it on the warrant. They're not gonna know it's being voted on. And then it'll be passed, well, maybe not even passed.
Not,
I guess-
we had had a discussion with this a while ago about this, but about just people not getting involved in it. But I think it also echoes just civic involvement in general. That's why
Right.
there's so many openings on committees.
Yeah.
In play. I mean, I think it just echoes the whole thing. I don't think, it concerns me, but it also kind of goes in line with a lot of where the culture's going, whereas people are not civically involved in.
No,
Until
well, not
something-
here. Other towns, they are. The other towns are packed for these meetings. For MBTA, every other town in the state was packed with people. Our people, nobody showed up, and then they're all like, how'd that pass? I'm like, 'cause you
No, it
didn't
wasn't
come and
nobody.
vote."
We had over, what?
Not nearly what other towns were
No,
getting, like
I agree
over
with you.
1,000.
Duxbury had, what,
We got
700, 800?
More than that.
I think everybody in Halifax was there.
Yeah.
So-
But
Eric,
anyways,
can
my
I
point
ask a
is.
question?
Well, hold on. I was just gonna say, my point is, if it's not on the warrant, it's just that's potentially gonna be an issue. That's all. I'm not
That's my-
saying.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
trust
know,
me, I mean, I've spent the last 2 weeks on the phone and texts and emails and conversations
Yeah.
and school pickup and, because,
Yeah.
hey, I mean, we're all talking about our kids. I've got 3 kids in these schools too. You know, like, I've got a parent on fixed income. Like, I've got the whole gamut of this stuff going on too. So I'm not minimizing the impact. I understand it.
I get it.
I'm not hearing
Yeah.
from the people that we represent that I can get my hands on,
Right,
that this is what they want.
right.
Everyone is saying to
I
me,
agree.
I can't do it. I can't do it. Like, I can't make this stretch any thinner.
Right. I only get,
People are
I'm the
feeling it.
chairman of the selectmen, I got 2 pieces of communication. That's it.
1 for, 1 against.
1 for and 1 against.
Yeah.
That's it.
So if it
That's
doesn't,
bizarre.
if we decide that it doesn't hit the town meeting floor, then does that cast an extra cost to us to put it
Yes,
on a
yes,
ballot?
Yes.
An
Because we'll have a
extra-
special
If
election.
the-
Special election
so
ballot.
if someone successfully moves an amendment more than the levy limit,
Yep.
then there's a cost of a special election. The question is.
What is that cost?
I
Do we
think it
know?
was around $10,000. So the question
I
just
couldn't
is,
remember
do
what
we
that
know
was.
that it would pass? I don't know.
I don't
And
know.
the feedback I'm getting is no.
It'll definitely have a much easier path to passing if we put it on the warrant.
Or not.
I don't know. I would disagree with that.
I think it makes it easier because there's a little bit more, I mean, I'm not,
I think it makes it easier to pack if you, but it, you
Either
can look at
way.
it either way, it doesn't
Right.
really matter. I just think that this isn't, and I'm not downsizing street signs, but this isn't street signs. I feel like this is something that the community should, as a whole, know about and be able to vote on.
Yeah.
That's,
That's what the ballot is for, John. The ballot is to make sure everyone knows about it and votes on it.
right, but it's,
But anyone
but
can
no one's gonna
amend
know
town
about
meeting
it. You're right,
budget,
but,
like anyone.
but if it's not known prior,
If it
that's
doesn't
the-
get to town meeting,
Kim, sorry, I just have a
That's all we
question.
talked
I mean, I
about
get
since
both sides of
October.
it.
I know.
Yeah, but,
In your January 28th meeting, you did make the statement that although you personally didn't support an
did.
override, you wouldn't prevent it from being on the
Correct, and then I
warrant.
just told you this evening that I've spent the last 2 weeks calling everybody I could get my hands on, and they don't support an override, and they don't want it on the warrant. So I'm just telling you, the people that I represent who have spoken with me.
Sure,
Don't want
but
it.
it's also been recognized that everybody has spoken to a fairly small sampling of the town,
Sure.
given the entirety of,
Sure.
what is taking place.
But I don't understand why people aren't
But
telling
Eric,
us.
to the point is, it doesn't prevent anyone from voting to have an override. You can amend the budget to whatever number you feel like you need. If it passes, it passes.
I
And
can say
that's
right
not
now, I'll probably
advantageous
just
for
do that.
anybody.
So, I mean.
I'm not trying to start a fight, I'm just trying to explain where
I'm
I'm
just saying,
coming from.
at this point,
and
it
what I'm
sounds
thinking.
like, if what you're saying is, you guys.
We
are
didn't
not gonna-
vote, but I'm just-
You're not
that's
going to
where I'm
vote, but I
standing.
already know how you two feel.
We
I
might
was on
vote.
the committee with you two for 2
I'm
years.
making a motion in a minute. Yeah, we're gonna vote.
Well, I already know
What are you
you're
gonna
going to
say?
vote, but I'm just saying, knowing where you're at, I just know that for a fact that there will be an uprising now of people, and we will come to the floor and we will ask for the override. So.
That's good, isn't that a good thing for you?
Oh, I'm just saying, it's fine, but we can ask for whatever we're going to ask for, and then it's not going to be a specific number. It's going to be whatever somebody wants, 5 million, 6 million. Hey, give it up, and then people can just ask for whatever now. So it's not going to be 2 million looking at the budget. Honestly, I'm not fiscally like that, but I could say that people could say, all right, we'll give 3 million, and we'll just go up to the levy for 3 or 4 million, let's give it a couple of years. And people could just rally around that. So instead of just giving what we believe we could have, people might go and just ask for a lot more.
Respectfully, you're asking for us to not only vote for a Prop 2.5 override, but
it
also
on
to
the warrant.
sponsor the budget if you don't believe in it, because it could go higher. So you're asking for a vote for us to put it to Prop 2.5, and then also the fear of it being the wrong budget, which means that we have to put a budget amount into the warrant for us to be careful that somebody doesn't come in and make it $5 million. So that's now me
Somebody
voting
did-
twice on something I don't believe in. Like, that's a little stretch. That's a bit of a stretch on the fear.
Hold on a second. So here, if we don't put it on the warrant, and again, I totally understand your rationale, but the downside again is, and again, I don't know if parents will organize to go to it. I mean, again, we don't have that much communication. We haven't had that many people actually talk as they have in years past. So maybe a lot of them don't agree with it. I don't know. But if they do have people that do show up to the town meeting, which they probably will, but it's not on the warrant, and we just get the normal 150 people that show up, but 200 parents show up, it passes. So that's the downside, unless we don't put it on the warrant, but then we're advertising to everybody, hey, there's going to be an override vote at town meeting. It's like a shadow town warrant. Do you see what I'm saying?
I didn't know about that supermajority thing. until this evening, so I wasn't aware of that.
About our vote to get on the
Correct.
town.
I
And I'm not trying to change your mind, I'm just worried about that, that's all.
letting you know that I wasn't aware of it, so it's
Yeah.
not like I came to this meeting tonight knowing that we need to try to still maintain what we discussed in the fall, which is avoiding an override, because we need to do that for this community. This budget has increased a lot over the last 5 years, and it's not just a lack of new growth. There's a lot in that budget, and we need to, as a town, both sides, school, town, everything, take a very, very close look. What do we want for services? What do we have to have for services? What do we need for services? And really prioritize that. I think we've done that to the best of our ability, and people are maxed out on how much they're willing to pay in taxes, and for water, and for sewer, and they're done. So
Respectfully,
excuse me, I'm still speaking.
Okay.
I think that I came to this meeting assuming if we voted, I'd be in the minority. And I'm okay with that. I think you all know I'm okay being the one no vote. I'm okay being in the minority. What I try to do is I look at every vote as if if I was the only one voting, how would I vote? I don't support the override. So I have to vote no.
And I came to the assumption that we were going to be probably pushing this off 2 more weeks to get better numbers. But if it's supermajority vote and we don't have the votes, it's just wasting everybody's time.
So, hold on, if I can, Carl, would you be willing to answer a question for me?
It depends on the question. Just put them on the spot.
I want to get your input. You're the chair of the finance committee. You were the liaison with the schools for forever. So you know all sides of this. You know what happens at town meeting. So you've heard our conversation here tonight about whether it's on the warrant or not, and whether, the fact that it can still be passed if we don't put it on the warrant and people don't know about it, and then people are packed there and it gets voted on at the town meeting anyways. Obviously, it would still have to go to an election, which arguably a lot more people show up for an election than they do at the town meeting. So just knowing that, what would you do if you were on the selectmen? What's your
Really putting him on the hot seat.
I know you're against, I know in general, in the past, you've supported overrides when they were necessary, and I know you're also financially prudent, and you've done great things for Kingston because of your views.
I think you know that I'm an absolutely strong supporter of schools.
Mm-hmm.
But I have reached the point, and I believe the Finance Committee as a whole has reached the point where we do not believe a Proposition 2.5 override should be voted on this particular year. That we believe that the 7.5% increase that is in the budget now is more than adequate considering what's been brought in the past. As long as you brought me up here, though, I'm going to offer one positive statement, okay, that I haven't heard anybody mention. You brought in a check last month for $338,000 for reimbursement for the Baymont students.
Mm-hmm.
That reimbursement was for 45 to 49 students for the period ended December 31st, 2024. I don't like using one-time funds, but I would strongly encourage the school committee to look into the fact that you're probably going to get another $600,000. Why hasn't somebody volunteered that there's another $600,000? We're willing to take the risk and put that as a revenue item into the budget to offset some of this $1 million here. I've heard you people say over and over again how you've done every last thing you can. However, you're looking at a, $16 million budget, and you were able to remove $57,000. Come on, dig in there. I don't feel that you understand the details of that budget well enough to be able to say you've done everything. I think our illustrious select woman here questioning the possible revenue items. And yes, I heard some answers, well, you know, maybe it sounds like $250,000 of revenue, but when I consider this offset, that offset, consider all the offsets. If it's a $100,000 potential item, we're talking about dollars here that are important. So let's look at every item that might be a $50,000 item, $100,000. To answer your question though, Eric, I absolutely would be voting against moving a warrant article for an override. And I believe that strongly, not only for schools, but for police or any other function in this town where it may be necessary. Because you don't realize the impact, as I've said before, of future charges. Okay, you're going to have debt financing for school roofs. You're going to have debt financing for different things, for possibly a new police station. All of that adds dollars to the average taxpayer's bill. Thank you.
Eric.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I just had the benefit of emailing back and forth with Attorney Tallerman. Someplace in our conversation yesterday when we were talking about percent approval amounts, there was a misunderstanding. It's a simple majority for the Board of Selectmen tonight if they were to bring forward and want to pass an override and include that on the warrant. So I apologize for any misunderstanding that I may have brought forward to the board.
What law is that, just so, because I'd love to reference that.
I'm
Just
gonna-
'cause I was looking for it when.
I think Attorney Tallerman's maybe looking for it now.
Okay.
Megan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Carl's statement about the emergency shelter reimbursement. We were not expecting any money in this school year at all. That showed up. It was completely a surprise, and while it was for the period of the beginning of the year until December, there was no explicit, and you will receive another one after this. We're hoping that we will, and, you know, now that quite a bit of money was allocated towards, you know, that area, it seems likely. However, we would be foolish to spend $600,000 without actually knowing whether or not it is coming.
All right. Tricia, did you have?
Yeah, I do have a procedural question on the town floor.
Yeah.
As far as what is the number that goes, we approved a budget last week, and you guys approved a budget prior to that. So what number are the townspeople going to be voting on at the town meeting?
We haven't decided that yet.
Okay.
So
But-
if right now, the budget that we approved is the one that we did 2 weeks, whatever, whenever it was. If we agree to put an override on it, correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, that's when we would adjust the budget to what you had, which would include the amount that would be needed for an override.
So by
Right.
state law, it's the Board of Selectmen's budget that goes to town
Right,
meeting.
right.
And I would
Finance
also
Committee
just say
presents
to Carl that the things that we've been talking about coming in and changing in the school budget are exactly the emergency shelter funds, are exactly the outer districts, are exactly some of the shared cost numbers that we just don't know. So if people want us to put together a budget that says, here's this assumption, this assumption, this assumption, this assumption, we can meet the town budget provided all these things come in and we
Right.
hit home runs.
Oh, I've been saying
We'll
that since the
gladly do
beginning,
that.
like,
But that's why we're asking for an override, is because we're saying, we don't know that we're going to hit home runs on those.
Right.
And if the allocation of the pot of money that the town has is going to be divvied up to the police, the fire, and the schools and the administration as it is, we're asking to be considered, the townspeople get that option to put forward the override. And if we don't need it, it gets withdrawn from the town floor. I think that's a lot easier sell than somebody coming down to the floor and then having departments fight amongst themselves at town meeting. I think that's a crazy thing to think about, is that somebody goes down there and says, you know what, the schools really need this money. We don't think the police department needs this money. So that's crazy to go to the town like that. So that we were asking for the override tonight, the vote tonight, as a placeholder, so that it does get on the town meeting, so that we can put our flyers around and ask people what they do think about it. So I think to take that option away from townspeople, I don't agree with it, respectfully.
I appreciate that.
So
Did I hear
I'm
somebody
gonna
wanted to say
argue with
something?
Jay for a second, if that's okay. So, I don't know. So Title 9, Chapter 59, Section 21C, limitations on total taxes assessed determination by voters. So it gets a little bit confusing, but in Section E, it says the local appropriating authority of any city or town, which is subject to the provisions of paragraph D, which we are, may be made by a 2/3 vote, seek voter approval to assess taxes in excess of the amount of allowed pursuant to said paragraph D. Now, I would have normally argued that we are not an appropriating authority, town meeting is, but the law itself defines a local appropriating authority in a town to be the Board of Selectmen. So I was trying to look this up when you mentioned it. I don't remember who mentioned it earlier today, but this evening, 6 o'clock, I got a message that said this might be a super majority, and I was like, what law is that? Because I want to know. So, I don't know, Jay's there.
So, if I may, under the Proposition 2.5 override and debt exclusion question guideline that DLS puts out, it states specifically on page 3 with references to the appropriate statute that a majority vote of the board is needed to place an override or underride question pursuant to Chapter 59, Section 21C, sub G and H. And a 2/3 vote of the board is needed to place an exclusion question on the ballot pursuant to 21C, I think, I and a half, J and K.
Huh. Doesn't reference E, huh?
Not in the guide. So I
defer to the attorney.
Yeah, for whatever confusion that I may have caused in my conversations with Keith, I think I may have been mixing up the exclusions from the overrides, but it's a simple majority, so that's why I wanted to, because I knew it was important to your discussion.
So I personally would prefer to wait until we know what's going on with Silver Lake, and that's just a couple of days. I'm not saying that they're going to have a number, but I hope they do, or at least have a better idea of
Will
where
it be
they're
by
gonna
next meeting or 2 more meetings that we'll have info from them?
Well, Silver Lake meets this Thursday.
Okay.
And I'll be there at that meeting as well. Shared cost is the 25th, so that's 2 weeks. So they'll know that number. And again, I'm probably less worried about that. And if it goes down more, obviously that will help bring down their budget. Were you going to say something, Keith?
I just was going to ask the board if, when you finished, is there any desire to have a special meeting next week to try to make a decision if we have a Silver Lake number?
I would say.
I can, but I don't know if we need to. If you guys think that week matters, then I can make it. But.
Again, we're looking now at almost March.
Yeah, so then, I'm available.
That number, or the whole number. And I've talked about that before, about even putting forward different levels of numbers on the warrant, if we did put it on the warrant. So there's a lot of options. I mean, this is ugly. I mean, this is probably the worst. It's not clear cut because the problem isn't really defined. I think that's one of the biggest issues. It's like, okay, but we're gonna have the same or worse next year, so we don't know. That's all I have, really. If there's nothing else.
I apologize, but, so Monday's a holiday, so if there's an interest in having a meeting on Tuesday, and Tricia's checking now to see when this room is available next week, it doesn't have to be Tuesday, just depending on the availability of the room, but we have a 48-hour posting requirement so I've got to post on Thursday for a Tuesday meeting.
No, if it can be remote, I can. Okay. I mean, I'm assuming this won't be a super long meeting, so I can make it work.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
All right, so why don't you poll the board and we'll see if we're ready. I'll also reach out and see if I can get an idea from them whether they're any closer to a number.
What was our cutoff for? Oh no, it's 35 days, so we have.
We have plenty of time.
Not that we want wait. I forgot that how much time we had.
I mean, I still think that the word needs to get out, that there's massive cuts potentially pending, an override potentially pending. Where we, at this point, it's not officially on a warrant, it may not be on a warrant, but everybody needs to understand that this is what's going on, and the word needs to get out to people. So, all right, anything else from our board? All right, anything else from you guys? Yeah, no, go ahead.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, roll call vote, Sheila Vaughn,
Yes.
Katrina Arietta.
Yes.
Michael Shagane.
Yes.
And I'm also yes.
Oh, Ginny.
I do. After so we're going to take we're going to take about a 4-minute recess just while they're leaving. We'll be back in about 4 minutes. Our next item is the additional FY26 budget discussions.
Can we just pass over it?
Um,
I actually have a question, if I can,
Yep.
on that. So, in the meeting, whatever date that was, when we voted the bottom line budget number, we added 15,000 for the server, police, fire server. Should that be in the operating budget, or should that be in the small equipments article? Because it didn't occur to me until after we voted it.
I think it's fine in either one.
Okay.
I'm not sure there's going to be a small.
Oh, okay.
Well, you're fine.
And it could be that we have enough equipment needs over the course of however many years
Yep.
that we're looking at, that we'll need $15,000 worth of something in equipment. I just wanted to make sure that we had that covered.
So the police chief has a few things he wants to talk about tonight. So, Chief, you're up. Aren't you glad you got to stay through that long school discussion?
Am I starting to share now?
Don't make me laugh. He likes the clicker. And I don't have a mouse. Fine.
It's on.
My keypad doesn't work. The trackpad doesn't work. No.
Looks like it, yep. All right. We good? Good to go?
Good to go.
All right. Good evening, honorable members. Thanks for continuing the conversation that we started a while ago. Before I get into that, this is going to be a lot more brief than your last discussion, I promise. Before I get into that, though, you know, I had some help from the members of the admin team, and I take accountability for any of the anything in this presentation that is inaccurate. You know, there's been a couple of comments tonight about leadership and ideas of it and what it is, and I think one such younger gentleman who was commenting on it earlier was probably making reference to the fact that when you're in a leadership role, you sometimes have to make the unpopular and difficult decision. I've referenced in several public addresses and guest lectures this American statesman named Colin Powell, and he gives a speech at Colgate University's commencement where he talks about leadership. What he references, and I instilled this in the, you know, this idea into the new employees, is he references the need for getting the troops and the people what you need, including equipment, resources, training, recognition, and things of that nature. And when referencing resources, that the obvious thing that we're talking about is the need for help on the street, the need for additional personnel. I don't think anybody disputes the fact that there is a definite need for growth in the Kingston Police Department. And I appreciate the support that the members of the board and Mr. Hickey have shown us to this point in time. I mean, it goes without saying that there's a need, but when I first arrived here, the conversation began. So to say that we haven't added any personnel since 1998 is something that I just really have to correct here just briefly, is that this board allowed us to add an additional patrol officer and an additional dispatcher. So I just want to be open and transparent in pointing that out. So it's one position. Everything is sort of centered on the idea of needs, listening to what the school's talking about, you know, listening to what's happened in the past with the fire chief and additional positions for him and his department, and the same thing for us. And there are some revisions that are more attuned to a question that you, Mr. Chairman, asked me last week, is where are the priorities? So you're going to see a quick adjustment in the positions that we're asking for with that. So the acronym here, just to review it: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. That last one, timely, that's a steep one because the timing couldn't be worse. But if this is being done in a timely manner because there's more than adequate time to prepare for whatever the solution the town decides is going to work for this town and the board.
Well, to be fair, it's within the first year you've been here.
Yeah.
So timely in that way.
I like the way you think.
I got you.
Is it attainable? That's a real good question. Is it at the right pace for this town? Well, you're the highest executive authority in town, and it's for you to decide. So it's not for a lack of information. I'm trying to be forthcoming with everything that the board would want to know about supporting the need for growth. Wow, I skipped to the end. So the previous slideshow was 10 slides. This is just an addition of a few more, and it's just some things that we're going to continue the conversation about. What this is a breakdown of calls for service based on 1,000, one police officer per 1,000 per community. So anything that's represented in blue is the year 2024. Anything that's represented in yellow is the year 2023. And you've got Kingston, Duxbury, Halifax, Rochester, Pembroke, Carver, Hanover, and Hampton PD that were analyzed. The source of most of this information is the Regional Operations Center in Duxbury that gave us the totals for numbers of calls per year per 1,000 residents per police officer. So what that basically does is it creates an average. And this takes in total sworn personnel to include management, deputy chief, chief, people that might not necessarily answer street calls. But it gives you a calculus for how many calls per year per police officer. And we're at the head of the pack on that, with 2024 being basically 400 calls per year for each police officer in the Kingston Police Department. And, behind that, obviously, 375 for the year 2023. So all this really is how much work are we doing based on how many people we have. And Kingston, with all the surrounding communities, is at the head of the pack on that. We thought that it would be helpful for you to see these numbers, to recognize where are we now and where do we need to go. So the log events represent a 23% increase in 2024, and in 2023, a 13% increase. The calls for service is a 10% increase in 2023, and in 2024, a 6% increase. So the log events is a much larger list. Calls for service is stuff that is more like an investigation, an offense report, a crash, a call. Log events includes everything. So Kingston's tied for second in the lowest number of officers per 1,000 residents. And we led in the most calls per officer per year based on the last slide that you saw. This is our organizational chart as we stand here today. You may have seen this before, you may not have. You can always refer back to it, and I'll make sure that the board gets a copy of this presentation. So, Deputy Chief of Police is a very high-ticket item. It's a second-in-command position. It's part of a succession plan. And after giving it a lot of careful consideration, one of the things that occurred to me is that I just got here. A succession plan is something that should be involved in a year 2, year 3, or year 4 request if you guys will have me for a 4th year. So in lieu of putting a delay on that deputy chief's position, we added a patrolman. So the request is for 4 patrolmen, an additional sergeant, and an additional dispatcher. The patrolman spread would be 3 for the shifts, 1 for day, 1 for midnight, 1 for 4 to 12, 1 full-time SRO at the middle, and then the sergeant would be in charge of the family services unit, which we haven't so much as got off the ground yet, and the dispatcher we discussed last week. The 2 extra shifts would be collateral responsibilities, administrative supervision type work. We're specifically leaving the deputy chief out for the reasons that I just stated. This is what the organizational chart would look like. In bottom left yellow, you see traffic officer. That's the one that the board previously authorized and town meeting later authorized. That officer will be going into the academy in April. That officer will probably be ready for the street around January of next year, so we can develop a full-time traffic safety officer that will still be on patrol but doing collateral type duties associated with traffic studies, possibly reconstruction type work, and things of that nature. And that's based on the interest that the board had when we talked about that position. Over here on the right side, Family Services Unit Sergeant, that position would be assigned to the Investigative Services Unit. So until the program were totally off the ground, what you would end up with is you'd end up with an augmentation to the Investigative Services Unit. I don't know if I've talked about it previously, but there's been some change in case law, and discovery of evidence is all but a full-time job. The court prosecutor, whoever's doing it at the time, if the current guy is away, the lieutenant over here, he's standing in for the court prosecutor, and because the rules of evidence have changed, the discovery it's all but a full-time job. There would be a litany of things that would keep the Family Services Unit Sergeant occupied while working in the Investigative Services Unit until the program will be fully off the ground, which would involve something that I'm still waiting on. The grant has been applied for the clinician, and we talked about that in the past. This is the price tag, $1,366,000 and change. These funding needs would be for the average $500,000 valued home, $200.13 per year, or $50.03 per quarter. I had a medium home value of $633,000 of the home values in Kingston. Which amounts to $253 per year, or $63 per quarter. So, any questions on any of these slides so far?
I don't think I'll have an answer for today, but when you're thinking about that 1.3 million, I don't know that number.
Yeah.
Similar question to what Tyler was talking about and what we brought up at the school committee is, given current contracts and things in place we already have for next year, and we're thinking about fiscal year 27, what would that increase look like the following year? Because we need to be thinking about that too as we think about these things.
Sure. I mean, if you want me to.
I don't think you can crunch that number in your head.
Yeah, I mean, if the board were to entertain funding this in whatever manner, I mean, if it's an override and it's attached to something that the board decides on later in time or whatever, I mean, myself, my assistant, Keith, Kathleen, we're going to work together to answer that concern before anything goes forward with a final vetted number down to the penny.
Laura, they can't hear you.
So if I was going to jump in, maybe I'll save you some steps. The only unknown, and we would have to estimate this, our contracts, collective bargaining agreements expire at the end of fiscal 26, so we wouldn't know what fiscal 27s were.
Okay.
We could certainly estimate what those costs would be.
So if it were 2% versus a 3% COLA type situation, that's typically what we've been talking about.
We could certainly show a range, absolutely.
And then any applicable steps, because when we're thinking about increases, we're thinking about those as well.
Notwithstanding this request, I had a previous conversation with Superintendent Proulx about funding, using the school funds to fund the full-time SRO. Somebody mentioned earlier that there could be an increase in Chapter 70 funds next year, which is music to my ears, because I would be seeking that money to fund a full-time SRO. The work, the demands, the need to have the host community set up and stable is certainly there for that. And I'm supposed to be at the meeting on the 25th. I don't know if that's changed on the agenda, so that I should be there Thursday. I'm going to reach out to the superintendent tomorrow to find out whether or not I should be at a different meeting. But if that in fact happens, that would offset the cost, or most of the cost of anything that's in this request. So the reason that we're changing from 3 patrol and a deputy chief to 4 patrol and a sergeant is because I stood before you 2 weeks ago, and the question was asked, where's the priorities? Bodies on the street is the priority. That doesn't change. And the numbers that we're using to come up with the costs associated with these incorporates base salary, benefits, excluding shared costs with health insurance, and that's something that they will continue to work on. You guys are tired. I saw somebody yawning. And that's all I have. That's the latest update, so, any other questions?
Any questions, comments?
No, I guess my only question is why the jump from 3 to 4, and are you weighing the fact that you're essentially getting rid of the deputy down the road too, because now we're talking about 5 changes instead of 4. Where was the thought process on that?
Well, it's a fair question. So last time I talked about the 1, 3, and 1, I mentioned that gets us about halfway there. The future should hold an additional patrol officer until we get to a certain number that both you and I in the department can live with. So that 4 gets us a little closer to that, but you're taking 1 person out of the rotation and putting that officer up to school if it works out that way.
So again, like the schools, we don't have to take a vote on this. This would be an override, whether we would, put an override on for all of these items, some of these items, or none of them. And again, for me, from my perspective, I see this different from the schools. The schools are going up. I'm concerned because we're going to have another problem the following year. Police, this is just upping. We don't have the same kind of jumps, but we're looking at trying to bring the staffing up to an acceptable level. Whether this is the right time or not to do it, I get it. I agree. This is probably the worst timing. If we do an override for the schools, whether, regional, elementary, then we may want to consider, some sort of an override for police as well. But again, I don't think we need to make a decision on that tonight.
My vote still doesn't change.
That's fine.
As much
That's
as
fair.
I really appreciate having this information, though, this is helpful, and seeing the plans for the future, this is just not a good time for growth.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
How do we get from here to there, if not this year? What would the board want us to do?
It's a challenging situation, right? So if this board puts an override on the warrant, I could see an argument for why people might ask for the police increase as well. Because if you're asking for 1 million, why not 2? I'll probably vote against it, but I can understand the argument for it. Because if you have to ask for an override anyway, you have to have the ballot vote anyway, if that's the path that the board and the town chooses to take. And if not now, when? We just don't have any growth to support this kind of growth. So financially, I don't know when we'll be there. Hopefully soon. Carl Pike would like us to be more business friendly and get more commercial taxpayers in this town, and hopefully that can support growth in departments like yours that need it.
And there's a few things that I think that one thing that needs to be done is we need to lift our water moratorium. A lot of this tonight, a lot of the discussions tonight between school and this comes down to the fact that we've run out anybody that wants to do any kind of business in Kingston. And that's because of a water moratorium by the water commissioners. It's just the way it is. And so we need to lift that, and we need to allow the people that work in this building, like our town planner, our building, and some of the people in the planning board and other TA, to be able to go and to meet with businesses to be able to bring in revenue, to come here. And that's, I'm not going to go back on my other speech from, where funding needs to come from, which is the state. Part of that needs to come from the state as well, and I think that definitely includes safety, public safety. And we've had discussions about this. But the other pieces, we need to be able to entice good, taxable businesses to come into a town that is happy to have them and put them in the right areas. But we haven't been able to even have those discussions. And we're seeing the real negative downfall from that. So, unfortunately, that's just, if we're talking about the cause and effects and how can we get there, that's one of them for sure. And it'd be a good time for people to start putting pressure on the water commissioners to come up with a solution so it doesn't hog tie our entire town from moving forward, because growth is inevitable. It's part of the deal. People get raises, things grow. We need to hire cops. We need to take care of our schools, and so.
Sure, I mean, as recently as about 2 p.m., I was on the Department of Justice website, and everything's still under lockdown, and it's probably going to stay that way for the foreseeable next 2 to 3 months. There's an inherent obligation that I have to advocate for the men and women of the Kingston Police Department. There's an inherent obligation that you have as the highest elected officials to provide services, public safety, schools. It's just my opinion. It might not mean much, but if an override is not a consideration of this board and it goes to town meeting by a motion on the floor, then you'll lose control of it. I said 2 weeks ago, give me a number that works and I can work within it. I didn't get a number. I understand that you don't have to come up with a magical number. So we're working off of this one for the time being, that these are the legitimate needs of the department. And if it becomes a directive of the board that I work with the town administrator to come up with something more palatable for the board, I'm willing to do that. But we're way off where we need to be. And without a certain plan about when and how we get to a department that's more appropriately staffed, there is no certain future.
Yeah, and seeing what we actually need to become a department that we're supposed to be is scary. I mean, it's alarming, and it should be. I'm alarmed by it.
I mean, how short we are.
How short we are. I mean, how much we actually need this is alarming. Call volume, all the statistics you've shown, I 100% agree with it. And I think our board has been very pro police department. It's just we're still dealing with this. It circles back to the same thing we're dealing with in revenue, and it's very difficult, especially on this.
It was something that the town administrator mentioned in the department heads meeting today about one of our guys who's out injured right now. It's open source. It's on Facebook, so I'm not revealing any national secrets. But if we have another one of those, another member of the department go out injured, we're going to be crippled. The cost associated with the backfill of overtime for a supervisor is substantial. And we don't have anybody on the bench to pick from. So I'm not complaining. I'm just describing the present condition that if we have another officer go out injured, the costs associated with that, the impact on the budget, is going to be crippling. So without having the buildup of that staff, that personnel, that reserve of people to pick from, we're going to have to come up with some creative solutions.
All right, any other questions? All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Can I echo my comments to the school folks? Is no one doubts your passion or your dedication to your department and to this community. So thank you for all of your work, and I appreciate this and look forward to trying to find a way.
Thank you. All right, next item, recommendation of 2025 transfer station sticker fees from the interim streets, trees, and park superintendent. We have a list. We talked about it a little bit at our last meeting. Just to be clear, Keith, the proposed fees in here are what was included in our budget, right, for revenues?
Yes.
So we did not, this bumping these up doesn't increase our revenues because we already, okay. So we talked about this before.
Wait, say that again?
The proposed fees for the transfer station were already
Adjusted.
So, hold on.
increasing these fees.
The proposed fees are different numbers than the proposed fees that you had suggested.
They are, but what I think the chairman is trying to say is that the estimated revenue numbers for the transfer station in the fiscal '26 budget are based on the fees that you have in front of you this evening, not operating as a total subsidized transfer station.
Right. If we went to
Got
those
it.
numbers in the last meeting, we would have additional revenues to put in our budget.
Got it.
But it was based on this, so this does not affect our budget for next year.
Right.
If we vote them lower, it will.
Right, sure.
But again, I think we heard from folks and we understand, one of the concerns obviously is raising the decals too much in 1 year. Don, you expressed that concern. I disagreed with you and I thought, no, we can raise it more, but obviously we got enough feedback that I no longer agree
I think
with
we
that.
have to be careful and
Yeah.
cognizant of not doing too much in too many places all at once.
Right.
But something of note, Sean and I, Mr. Turner and I had talked about the one-day permit. That was an area that I advocated that we don't go too high. I think $10 is reasonable. But the reason I don't want to go too high on that particular item is I want to encourage people to get that one-day permit to throw away their trash and whatnot at the transfer station, as opposed to doing something they shouldn't. So
So
I
if there's
appreciate
no
that.
questions or comments, we can entertain a motion.
I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to eventually get that 62 to 65 category, like not there and just have 66 plus, but I think that takes time. So just progressively making that closer to the regular sticker over time and then have less categories.
I think too that this kind of supports the beach stickers that we did too.
Yeah.
Just
That your second decal makes.
for PAC TV, I'm hearing from people at home that they can't hear anything, so just so you know.
Let's make
Yeah,
a bunch.
so I was just letting them know in case.
I was like, I'm
There's
make
no
a-
sound on TV. is
Let's
the
make a bunch
message
of
I
motions
got.
real fast.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah.
All right.
I move the Board of Selectmen accept the recommendation from the Superintendent of Streets, Trees, and Parks as presented and listed above.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Did you want to say something, though?
Well, I was just saying, yes, that it supported the beach sticker too, because that second decal, or any regular decal, is also a parking permit for the town.
Yeah.
So to
And-
keep that at the same level makes sense.
Just a reminder here too, we've got a lot left in our meeting, plus an executive, and it's almost 9.
That's all right.
Let's do it.
All right, discussion of ambulance fee increase. As discussed at January 28th board meeting, Fire Chief Douglas proposing the following ambulance fee increases. The rates went up for ASL 1 from $24.50 to $25.50, that's only $100. ASL 2, $29.90 to $32.50. BLS, $18.50, it stayed the same. And mileage is the same, 50 per mile.
I'm assuming this is in response to our conversation about
Correct.
raising fees, but to stay within a certain level so that we don't overprice ourselves.
And just to be clear, these assumptions were also part of the budget that we voted on. So if we go up or down, it changes our budget.
Okay.
I just got a friendly amendment that the date is February 12th.
Oh, yeah, got it.
So you're going to make the motion?
Sure. I move the board,
Yeah.
I move the board approve proposed ambulance fee increase as presented, as amended, effective February 12th, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Stumbled through that one.
That's okay. And we have an approval of 2 one-day Chief, I didn't give you a chance to speak, but.
He was nodding.
I think, yeah, okay, sorry. Approval of 2 one-day liquor licenses at Kingston Collection,
Let me
bartending.
just read it, because everything in the description is also in the motion.
Yeah, so you want to make a motion?
Sure. I move to approve the request from the Bartending Service of New England LLC for 2 one-day beer and wine liquor licenses for the Sip and Stroll event taking place on March 15th, 2025, and December, is it really December 6th? Yes. Okay, 2025, at Kingston Collection from 12 PM to 4 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have a request from Candace Williams to hold the Best Buddies event on May 31st, 2025. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the request from Candace Williams to hold their 26th annual Best Buddies Challenge cycling event on May 31st, 2025, according to the traffic control plan presented with the following conditions. Best Buddies successfully acquires the proper permits from Mass DOT. Best Buddies contacts the Kingston Police Department for the scheduling of detail officers.
Are we aware of any potential, oh, sorry, second?
Second.
Yeah. Are we aware of any potential conflicts with graduations or anything else on those roadways or anything? I didn't see, okay, no, we're getting no, okay. just wanna make sure.
I know, no, that was good.
Do you know
That was good ask.
graduation?
I don't know the date of graduation, but the police department.
It's the night before. Okay, I'm hearing it's the night before.
May 30th.
Okay.
Do we see any cleanup issues with that, or no? Or it should be fine?
No, probably.
It doesn't go that
not
same
the same
route.
area.
in the
Oh,
same
it doesn't-
area.
okay, then,
I was more
Right.
thinking just traffic in
Yeah,
general.
yeah.
So
Okay.
all those in favor?
Aye. Sorry,
That's
not to
unanimous. That's okay.
complicate things.
Now, additional items, we need to select a board member to represent the board on the school regionalization study. Is anybody interested in serving on that?
I move to appoint.
Not Dawn, apparently.
Look at, I knew that was going to be the reaction. Yeah, I would love to. I would love to serve on that.
I would love to make a motion to have, is that okay? Missy wants to
I think we all want to
again?
make the motion, right?
Okay.
Missy, take it.
I move to appoint Melissa Bateman to represent the Board of Selectmen on the school regionalization study.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Bateman, what are you,
Mr.
yay or
Bateman
nay?
doesn't get a vote.
All right.
She's going to be a valuable resource to the committee, I'm sure.
All right, now we have to establish filing fee for road acceptance policy. When the road acceptance policy was approved, it stated a filing fee is required, but that amount was never set. Staff recommends a fee of $500 for staff support to the applicant during the consideration of road acceptance. Any questions, comments, or a motion?
I move the Board of Selectmen set the road acceptance policy filing fee as presented at $500.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, appointment to the Memorial Day Parade Committee.
I move the Board of Selectmen appoint Denby Forbes to the Memorial Day Parade Committee effective immediately through June 30th, 2027.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. All right, meeting minutes. I think we have some amendments. Somebody want to make a motion?
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the open session meeting minutes of December 23rd, 2024, January 14th, 2025, January 16th, 2025, as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, town administrators report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start off, if I could, with a quick note that I was given this afternoon from our acting acting Streets, Trees, and Parks Superintendent, Sean Turner. Last weekend, obviously, there was a storm. He wanted to highlight, if he could, how well our departments work together. With the Streets, Trees, and Parks Department being a little bit short-staffed because of planned vacations, there were a number of departments that stepped in and helped out, including the fire department who helped with getting notifications out on the parking ban and the closure of the transfer station, the police department and the police dispatchers for working with the Streets, Trees, and Parks to getting all the vehicles off the roads before they started plowing. The facilities department and the water department and the sewer department all helped out, providing employees to plow, including our water superintendent, Chris Varaca. Very much appreciate him going out and helping out with that. So again, I think it just shows the teamwork that we have here. It was a great effort. First time I think we've had that kind of snow in quite some time, so it was nice to see everybody work well together and clear the snow as quickly as we could.
And highlight the interim superintendent's
Yeah.
management of the whole storm has been.
Sean
has been awesome.
Sean has done an amazing job and really stepped up far above and beyond what I think anybody anticipated him doing. He's been phenomenal, and if there's a change in the position over there, the time he's had in the seat will significantly provide some additional support to the new director or superintendent. So can't say enough about how much Sean stepped up and did a great job. I think everybody, when he sat around the department head meeting today, appreciates him being there and doing such a great job. In other updates, our town planner, Valerie Massard, has applied for grant funding to update Kingston's local multi-hazard mitigation plan. That current plan was approved in September of '22 and is set to expire in September of '27. The grant we're seeking is just under $25,000. The Ring Road Flood Mitigation Project has been bid and awarded by Streets, Trees, and Parks. That work will begin in the spring. Staff has been working with the residents of Captain Jones and Barrowsburg Circle to present the necessary information to the Selectmen to include a warrant article on the annual town meeting this spring to have their roads considered for acceptance. The fire department was recently awarded a firefighter safety grant in the amount of $19,000 for safety equipment, obviously, and the police department was awarded $50,000 for the purchase of mobile speed trailers. So we'll be getting those. We were notified today that they'll be sending contracts out that we will be signing. as part of the $50,000 grant award for the police department. So trying to take advantage of the grants now that we can, and I think our department's doing a great job of doing that. Be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Any questions? No. All right. Thank you. Any selectmen comments? Tyler, do you have anything? No. All right, Kim?
I just wanted to mention that in our last meeting, I think we talked about how the local paper was maybe not continuing. Their recent paper said they might be after all. So I encourage anyone interested in getting a local paper, go ahead, check them out, and maybe they'll get enough subscribers to keep delivering the paper.
Anybody else?
That was it.
I'm all set as well. All right, our next meeting is, our next regular meeting is February 25th. We may or may not be scheduling a meeting for next week after we hear back from Silver Lake. Their meeting is this Thursday, so we will post that if we are having a meeting. All right, with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I would like to make a motion to
Wait,
adjourn to
executive session.
executive.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, I got that. She gave it to me already. To executive session.
Not to return to.
Not to return to open session.
Second.
Roll call vote, Eric, aye.
Roll call vote?
Yep, for executive sessions.
Tyler, aye.
Kim, aye.
Don, aye.
Missy, aye.
Sorry.
Just because I felt like it.
We're going down.
You can.